All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Sorry about the slight delay in getting that down. I was having a little trouble uploading one of the clips that I was trying to prepare for this. This is going to be a little bit shorter than the other, well, quite a bit shorter than the other two segments because I have sort of a part four grand finale coming. I'll just briefly go through what part four is going to be. I'm going to take the fight footage from this 1911 fight between Sam Langford and Bill Lang. I'm going to cut up each individual exchange in the fight and then have it play and then replay several times in slow motion, zooming in and stuff. We're going to take a look at the, just from what we have, go as deep as we can go into the footage that is available. But today I just wanted to just touch briefly on Bill Lang, the Australian heavyweight champ and former world champ, former world title contender. Just very, very quickly, I guess his real name was William Langfranchi, maybe Italian, but he was Australian, lived in Melbourne. He debuted in 1905 and he fought until 1916. And he sort of had a rocky start to his career. He started off, at least by, I'm going by BoxRec for records, which sometimes does leave out, there are maybe some things that weren't reported or they just haven't made their way to the site as far as the early era. But the major fights are pretty much on BoxRec, especially by this time. So, you know, maybe some of the guys in the opponent's records, maybe they had some more fights that aren't on BoxRec, but pretty much the major stuff is definitely covered. So Lang, 1905, he started off 4-3-1 in his career as a professional, but then in December of 06, he sort of like got, I guess, his best win to date. Peter Kling, who was 8-1 at the time, Lang won by DQ, fifth round of a 20-round fight. This is in Melbourne, and at this time, Lang is fighting. He fought that one at 177, and Kling was 172. So later on, Bill Lang puts on some meat. But then in March of 07, he fought Jack Johnson. And at the time, Johnson was, I believe, 40-5 with 8 draws. But Johnson was up around 186 at this time. Johnson later got heavier himself. Lang still fighting down in the 170s at 174. And he got TKO'd in the 9th round at 20. Apparently in the rain. 15,000 people in the crowd, roughly, in Melbourne. And he got stopped, but it was apparently it was pouring rain outdoors. So that would actually be really interesting to see some of today's stars. Like, go ahead, you guys fight in torrential rain. I don't know if it was torrential, but either way, that definitely had to complicate things. So after this loss to Johnson, he actually wins 11 in a row, if I've got this correct. And then he gets a shot at Tommy Burns, the heavyweight champ of the world. Canadian Noah Brusso, I believe is his real name, fought as Tommy Burns. He's in Australia. And Burns was 42-3 with 8 draws at that point in his career. And a smaller guy. I don't think I wrote down the weights they had, but neither of them were particularly large. Johnson was a beefier heavyweight, especially by now, by 08. But Burns gets him out of there. And I think it was in the 6th round. KO in the 6th round. So then following that, he does have some success. He wins, I believe, 5 in a row. Beats a guy, Jim Griffin, who was 21-5 at the time. He gets 3 wins over Bill Squires. So the first time they met, Bill Squires was 21-6. You know, he gave him 3 losses, and he also beat the great Bob Fitzsimmons. But this was more like dinosaur Fitz. You know, Fitzsimmons was, I believe, in his mid-40s by now, long past it, but still a great fighter. It's a big name win. And I think that one was also in Australia. I think Lang's just fighting in Australia. But then in April of 1910, so Tommy Burns had lost to the great Jack Johnson at the end of 1908 and lost his world title, but Lang rematched Tommy Burns in April of 1910 and lost over 20 rounds to Burns. Burns was 43-4-8 heading into that fight. So, and think that was for the Commonwealth title. I think that was for the I'm not positive, or the Australian title. My notes are scribbled here. I was having a little trouble with the upload. Shout out to the chat. I'll get over the comments in a second. So in 1910, Bill Lang goes over to the US and he fights Al Kaufman, who was one of the top contenders to Jack Johnson. And he was 21-2 at the time. They fought in Philly, which is a no decision state. So it's 6 rounds. And if no one's knocked out, there's no official decision. But there were 2 newspapers there, 2 separate Philly papers. The Item and the Record were both there scoring the fight. That's kind of how they got around the no decision thing. And Kaufman had about 20 pounds on him. So for what it says, at least on BoxRec, there's 7,000 to 8,000 people there in the crowd. And Kaufman got the best of it. He won the first round, and I think Lang picked up the next 2 rounds, and then Kaufman took away the rest of the fight. So the Philly Item and the Philly Record both gave that to Kaufman. And Kaufman was one of the guys who, you know, he was one of the top contenders, one of the top white hopes, as you would call it. But he was actually, you know, he had a good record, so he wasn't a white hopeless, but he wasn't on Johnson's level, as it turned out. But he was in there, and he did get a win over Lang, which must have been great for him at the time. So rebounding from that, in December of 1910, so that was in September. In December, I believe now Lang's fighting in England, and he beats a guy, I don't know how to say this, Salinas Jack Burns, who was 11-8-3, but he finished him, he TKO'd him in 12 rounds out of a scheduled 20. And then in January, the beginning of 1911, so this is when Langford's still in the US in the first month of 1911, but Lang is already in England. He fights P.O. Matthew Curran, who was 20-5 at the time, and he gets disqualified. Curran slipped, and Lang hit him when he was down, so he gets disqualified in the first round. And that's sort of a rambling summation of his career heading into the Sam Langford fight. He's coming off a first round DQ, and he's lost twice to Tommy Burns officially, and then he's also Al Kaufman used his size and got the best of him. But other than that, he's been successful since Jack Johnson. So since the Jack Johnson loss, so he's done pretty good. He's fought, you know, Johnson 2 fights with Burns. Those are extremely high level. Kaufman was one of the top heavyweights, so he's fighting at a high level. He's doing okay. But now he's coming in with Langford, who's been top guy for a couple of years now. You know, he had a lot of momentum by the end of 1908 when Johnson won the title from Tommy Burns. Langford was already like, yeah, that's the next guy. They should be fighting. So, and then they danced for until Johnson lost the title years later. So it never happened, but that was the hot fight. And in the newspapers, it's ridiculous how many different times it was announced by this paper or that or this person that finally Langford Johnson was going to happen. I mean, this is a, and I'm going to get over the comments. Shout out to BL and Scrapbook Boxing. For anyone watching now, check out their channels. Hardline Boxing Talk is the Boxing Librarians channel, and Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs. Those are a great watch. They both putting videos out these last few days too. You got to check that stuff out. Shout out to these guys. So coming into the let me pull up this graphic of. So coming into the fight himself, this is, I'm not going to go fight by fight with Langford, but this is, so the top 3 blocks, the yellow and the beige there are actually just a summation of the fights for the year, rounds for the year, and then career fights and rounds. So ignore those. So it's just green, blue, and red. So those are the years, the 3 years leading up to Langford's. So he'd only had 1 loss in a great deal of fights. In fact, going back before the graphic there, but that's just part of the stretch leading up to the fight. He was doing incredibly, and he avenged the 1 loss there to Jim Flynn with an 8th round knockout, vicious 8th round knockout. So, you know, and then the bottom block there, so he's already fought Joe Jeanette, the great Joe Jeanette, and then he beat Fred Atwater, who so far all I found, he's just, in Claymore's book, he just mentioned he was a color boxer and he was larger than Langford. but I don't believe he's anybody notable. So then he goes over to London. And let me just pull this up. I'm going to go to the comments. I'm going to go to the comments for a second. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate you. All right, let's see. Rodolfo, yeah, man, got over 70 subs now. That's good, man. I'm just happy to share what I'm trying to learn. Mad Chad, what's up now? First comment was when you hit 70 yesterday, 76. Yeah, it's nice. People are joining in. Scrapbook, good afternoon, sir. Thanks for coming. Okay, that's the comments. Let's go right back to the thing. So check this out. I'm going to put this on while I talk. Yeah. Okay, so there's Langford. Yeah, look at that left hook on Iron Hague. He did that in England too. This is just a little thing I put together earlier today. This was one of the ones that's giving me trouble to upgrade. Look how long his arms are. Barrel chest. Look at the neck. He's got the way Marvin Hagler had side plates of muscle. Langford has like a back plate, a back of the head plate of muscle. You can see there from just that little bit, you can see just how long he was. That's from on the right there. He was a little younger. Look at him. He's happy-go-lucky. So anyway, there's Langford looking sharp. He was big into fashion, man. That's where a lot of his fortune went over the years. Now here's some of the training. Scrapbook was mentioning this in part 2, where he's pushing off. They're doing this, so guys are rotating it. That's Bob Armstrong. That I believe that's the former colored heavyweight champ who helped train him. Very high level trainer, sparring partner, fighter. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it's hard to tell, but that might be Georgie Byers in a hat. He's a little heavy set, but Byers was older. There he is on the right hand side. And it looks like Liver Davis, the other part of his little camp, is in that sparring footage, sending in Byers and Bob Armstrong. But that first one, I'm almost sure that's Bob Armstrong. So anyway, I'm gonna run that one more time while I read something. So I'm gonna be reading some just a tiny little bit from, because something I thought was really interesting in this Clay Moyle book was how this fight. So this is like Lang's attempt to get a title shot. He wants to, they want to climb their way up through Langford, and this is a big fight. He's already fought twice in London. He didn't get the right thing the time out before, but it was a DQ. It wasn't like he got beat up against P.O. Coran. So Langford's come. They bring Langford over. The sporting club brings Langford over. Lang's going to put a show on and get himself a title shot. He's going to go back to America. He already lost to Kaufman in Philly, but that was a no decision. So they can play that off maybe a little bit. So the most interesting thing I thought about the lead up to this fight, I want to read a quote from Clay Moyle's excellent book on Sam Langford. Sam Langford, boxing's greatest uncrowned champion. Let me know, guys, if I'm ranting at all. Let me know to cool it out in the chat. There's a lot of information going through a very small brain right now. So I'll just mention, I'll get to the quote, but I'll mention, so this was apparently, as far as in British boxing, this is the first time women in England attended a prize fight in like significant numbers. And they had like stewards dressed in linen coats. Here, I found the quote. Check this out. It was the first time women in England attended a prize fight in any kind of significant numbers. Mackintosh added to the evening's atmosphere by providing stewards dressed in short white linen coats with gilt buttons to show ticket holders to their seats. At one end of the stadium, a full military band was in place to provide musical accompaniment as the two fighters entered the ring. Yo, they came into the ring to a military band. Jimmy Britt, former American lightweight champion of the world, had helped promote the fight and acted as chief assistant to Mackintosh. That's Hugh Mackintosh, the promoter. He was in attendance that night to serve as master of ceremonies, and he was attired in an immaculate suit of tails. Mackintosh, in full evening dress himself, was in his element as he proudly strolled through the crowd at ringside, nodding and bowing to his friends. As he stopped to talk to Butler, he confided that Lang will eat this colored boy, just eat him. Butler being one of the British writers, James Butler, if I'm not totally mistaken. In fact, check this out. Oh, look at this. Here's Bill Lang coming into the ring. There he is in the black robe, 6'1". I think it's 75.5-inch reach. He's got just a little bit on Langford, just a little bit of reach on Langford. Lots of height. So I'm pretty sure this is Bob Armstrong that's about to come in on the right-hand side. So there's Lang and his people. Okay, so Bob Armstrong is huge. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Bob Armstrong. And there's Langford in his robe. Look how short he is. He's so tiny. But it's said that, when he was at his peak, people would be very intimidated and impressed when he took off his robe, and they're just because in clothes can be deceptive. Wearing a walk-in hat, he's kind of chilling. It's okay. Introducing Langford to the well-dressed, proper English folk. I don't think they clap at this time. I'm not sure. What do they do? Knock, clap, politely clap, little finger clap. Here's Lang. So Langford's 5'7.5". Stu's about 6'1". He weighed in at 203 pounds. Langford, I should have written that down. Langford came in at 160 something. It was 168. He's walking around about at the super middle, what today would be the super middleweight limit, fighting a small cruiser. I guess that would be. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I see you over there in the chat. I see the comments in the chat. I'm just going to talk through this and I'll come do some comments. So I get the boxes out of the way. Yeah, and there's the program for the event. So this fight was a big fight. This Australian promoter put on a big thing in England with the guy who's Lang. This, even though he's lost his world title fight against Burns and lost to Burns again, he's been largely successful. Twice with Burns, Jack Johnson, the DQ, Al Kaufman, but he's been largely successful. Some of those fighters, I'm assuming, were notable. He's won the Australian in Australia. They won the Australian championship. I'm just going to rerun that in the background. It's nice. I like having this on. And so, he's one of the things that I'd heard about Joe Louis is, so I can't remember who told me, but someone was saying that. So the idea, it might have been a documentary. The idea was when Joe Louis, part of the reason he did so many, they were trying to think of what to do. Once he had the heavyweight title, he was going to all the regions and cities, major cities, and fighting the best heavyweight from there, like going on a tour. And that was partly how that schedule looked like it did and who was involved in it. Let's go beat the best guys, old school style, go beat the best guys from each region. But this is supposed to launch Lang to go to America. Either fight Johnson or have a name fight and then fight Johnson or something like that. That's the goal. Look at little Langford there in his robe. So I don't know if that's who that is. I don't know if that's Jimmy Britt or if that's just the British announcer. I'm not positive. Shout out to the chat. I see some comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. So yeah, as they show Langford to the crowd, he nods. I have the bit of footage. I don't have it chopped up. So this is part 3. Part 4, I'm gonna have all the fight segments of the fight, like each exchange, clipped separately with slow motion replay, so we can talk about just what we do have. We can really examine it in the most extreme detail. But I just wanted to put this up. I wanted to have this last time. So I'm going to read another excerpt. Once this runs, I'm going to read another excerpt. Well, welcome to whoever just showed up. I see the number go up. I will get to the comments, but thanks, everybody. So I'm going to read another quote from Clay Moyle's book on Langford, but I want to do it while I have the graphic on the screen. Once again, I said this in part 2. I should say this in all of my videos because I loved it so much. If you only ever get one boxing book, get this one. Boxing's greatest uncrowned champion, which is somewhat inaccurate because he was the colored middleweight and heavyweight champion. And as the colored heavyweight champion, he did significant work, dozens of fights for that. So, but the point stands, as far as established title, like the way it's ended up being talked about today. But this book is first rate, and that title does so. And look at that picture. I believe that is Bill Lang right there going through the ropes, getting schooled by Langford. Okay, so now I've got this up. I'm going to jump to the chat real quick. Now I've got Clay Moyle's book up. Order that online, even if you get it used. But if you buy it new, then the author gets a little some of that. And the list of references in this book, I'm not even 10% into them. The man did a lot to put that together. All right, let's see who came up. Let's see who came in the chat. Unrivaled, what's up, sir? Bruce. Scraps here, Antonio Mosley. Hello there. Yes, Unrivaled, Antonio, Scrap, Rodolfo, Bruce. Thank you guys. Great to see you here. I will click over. I'm scrolling through while I talk, trying to find certain graphics. Let me read this from Clay Moyle's book, because this is an extended, I want to give him proper credit, because this is an extended reading. I'm not just going to read a couple sentences here. Okay. It's from page 202. British sports writers. Hold on, let me sip my coffee. Let me do this in the right state. You know what I mean? That's better. Okay. British sports writers were in hog heaven during the weeks prior to the fight. McIntosh provided a training camp that had an atmosphere to which they were wholly unaccustomed. Many of the training sessions were open to the public. To ensure that attendees had as pleasurable an experience as possible, the innovative promoter spent a considerable amount of money providing food, drink, and other amenities for the parties viewing the training. More importantly, the sports writers found that they didn't have to grope for material to fill their articles. In the words of writer Trevor Wignall, it was brought to us on a cushion. On one occasion, it was arranged for a large crowd to view Sam in training at the Kensington Arena. Since the event was attended by a number of ladies, steps were taken to ensure that they would not witness anything objectionable. Near the end of the event, American lightweight Jimmy Britt, who was presiding over the event, announced that in order to determine whether Sam was fit, his manager Joe Woodman had secured the services of one Harry Tracy, who would spar one fast-paced round with Sam. In came a youngster of no more than 6 or 7 years of age, outfitted with fighting togs and gloves. He bounded up the steps to the ring, entered, and he and Sam commenced to spar. After a few seconds, the youngster delivered a punch that caused Sam to fall dramatically to the canvas. Time was called, and a verdict of draw was announced. The act was well received by those in attendance, and enthusiastic applause broke out when a revived Sam hoisted the young pugilist atop his shoulders. This type of lighthearted activity was not uncommon in Sam's training camp. It was noted by many that Sam and his sparring partners were a bunch of first-class comedians. This was in high contrast to Lang's camp, where work was reportedly performed in a grim and determined fashion. It wasn't that Sam didn't take his training seriously, he just believed in having some fun while he was working. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read in a row, because I don't want to just sit here and read out Clay Moyle's book. If you're able, purchase this book. I know it sounds like a plug. I'm not affiliated with the man, but I have a great deal of respect for what he must have gone through to put this together. Let's see here. You'll see we got a couple more comments. Mosley, everyone's saying hello. I would love to interview Clay Moyle. I should reach out to him, see if he'd come on the channel. I mean, I'm a small channel. I'm broke. I don't know if I could even come up with money to pay for his time, but there's a few others. Colleen Aycock, I think her name is, research historian, research Joe Gans in the most intimate detail and has done a lot of interviews. So that would be awesome. I would love to have people on. But right now, I have a very important chat coming up with Scrapbook Boxing and Hardline Boxing Talk, the boxing librarian. They're going to be coming on my channel and bless us with their estimation of Harry Grebb's top 5 toughest seasons. As far as I know, Scrap, we're all on the same page. We're not necessarily looking at his most successful seasons. We're looking at the toughest. Or at least that's the format we have. But if you want to do it a different way, that doesn't bother me at all. This is just going to be great. Antonio Mosley says, happy to see you. Let me put this up. Scrap's been putting up some videos, so is Hardline. This is great stuff coming up. Happy to see you too, Scrapbook. Been watching your videos. They're great. And we doing good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so while you guys talk amongst yourselves, I'm gonna rerun this too while we talk. Because it took a while. Now that I finally got it to upload, for some reason it was having trouble. I just want to run it up. I just wanted to weave the pictures in because StreamYard is a great service, but it doesn't have at least on the mobile version that I have, can't do like fade transitions and things like that. Plus, I'm not nimble enough on the phone to do it. So I was interested. So Macintosh, we can see that he's making this a big fight. I mean, it's like a high society event. He's got like catered events. They walked out to a military band. What the? Now, you see, if we had the full footage of the event, I imagine they would have footage of that military band jamming. They wouldn't be shot like today where you shoot it. Today you would shoot it past the runway there. So you get the military band in the background, you get the athlete come across, all dramatic, all NFL film style. But, it's a shame some of the things that were lost. I don't know if they even filmed it or if this was a fixed position camera, but it's interesting to think what they once had available that just hasn't really survived or is in private collections or just not available. So this was a big fight. And so Macintosh, I put in the description of this video, I want to talk about some of the gamesmanship involved in the fight by different people. So you have like a high profile event. You got a prominent fighter being the master of ceremonies, Jimmy Britt, great fighter. You got Langford, sort of this mythical danger machine that even the great Jack Johnson, the public, like even Jack Johnson doesn't seem to want to fight him. And then you've got Bill Lang, and he needs to get past Langford. And Macintosh, Lang's, I guess, promoter, he wanted to see what he could do. So in the footage, you'll see that they're wearing white gloves. And those are apparently if the story is true, I think this is from Langford's, like a decade or more later in Langford's memoirs. I think he mentions it. So it may not be a source from the time. Don't quote me on that. But, he was saying that it was rabbit fur inside the gloves. So Macintosh made both of the gloves more padded, basically to take the sting out of Langford's punches. He was still battering him all over the ring, but he just wanted to deaden it a little bit. So I don't know if that's actually true, but that will be an aspect of like let's seek to gain an edge. But you see guys arguing today over gloves, and I know I've seen in some of these boxing rivalry compilation things, some of the major boxing channels too. I've seen them where they're arguing over the gloves and last minute changes, things like that. So, but in this case, Macintosh, just as the promoter, he wanted the bigger guy not to get the full sting of Langford. Didn't help him much. He got embarrassed. So I think what I will do is I think right here, if I'm not mistaken, nope, that's one clip. That's one clip too. Hold on a second. I've got a bunch of stuff loaded here. Okay, here we go. That's approximately, it's a hand crank camera, so that's approximately full speed. I think this is the footage all in a row at approximately regular speed. It's uneven. Guy's hand cranking it. You can imagine you're seeing this fight. And the cameraman, if he's a fan, he's probably cranking faster as the adrenaline hits him as he gets into the fight. So who knows? But I just wanted to put this on. So that was one example of someone playing a little bit of games. You know, there's no weight limit or anything for the fight. So Langford's gladly given up roughly 30 pounds. Now, here's another sort of little thing, a little edge that McIntosh saw for Lang. So this is from pages 202 and 203 of Claymore's book. A few weeks prior to the fight, McIntosh bribed the stadium caretaker to smuggle Lang into an upper gallery at the Olympic Arena, where Sam was training. This would give Lang the opportunity to privately observe Sam in action and get a line on Sam's form. Caretaker had been well cared for by Sam in the way of tips, so he alerted Sam that his opponent was going to be watching. Sam determined he would provide Lang with something to think about. And there's a little bit of sensitive language in this. I'm just going to read the direct quote. It's not overly horrific. Some of the ways people are described is at the time. But anyway, speaking of the event many years later in a 1935 interview, Lang said, so this is quoted, this is Clay Moyle now quoting from the 1935 interview with Bill Lang. Quote, Sam showed me all right. In fact, he took just 10 minutes to make me a nervous wreck. At the time, he was sparring with Bob Armstrong, a huge Negro. He knocked Bob cold out. He knocked Bob cold in about 3 seconds. He did the same in rapid succession with 3 other sparring partners, with punches that traveled so fast I didn't even know which hand he used. After it all, Sam looked up my way and blew me a kiss. So that's crazy, you know. So he goes in and Sam gets tipped off, and I don't, you know, it's hard to say if they were clowning around messing with him or if he really was smacking him out hard or a bit of both. But it was very intimidating. And so that's partly why you see Langford pushing Bill Lang around. Lang is under the impression, I mean, he was under the correct impression that Langford had devastating power. Now, I don't know if that means he's literally putting everything into beating up his friend. I think Bob Armstrong, that he's really trying to knock him clean cold, but who knows? It's hard to say. You know, they're all tough fellas. Who knows what's going on? But it is important to realize that Sam was an entertainer. Some of the things that he says in his 1924, it's like a 35-part, I think, syndicated, you know, series of essays retrospective of his life, him and whoever the editor was for the Halifax Herald, and it was syndicated out. And that's where a lot of the certain information about him comes from. It's his reminiscences decades later sometimes. So I think that's important to note that for studying historical material, you know, someone saying something about themselves after decades of being an entertainer doesn't mean they're the same thing as like documenting what happened at the time. So, and same thing with Lang. Lang was speaking in 1935 about something that happened in 1911. So I think it's just important. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be believed, but it's important to understand, just like with anything, that, you know, I'm not sure what even the official term is, like primary sources, like it's the person involved or someone who was there directly, but sometimes it's the person involved, but it's a long time later. We know from the media age, from the video interview age, that, you know, people's stories change over time. You know, they get elaborated or they distill out. It's not always malicious. This is a great part of the fight. This is where Sam's starting to really crowd him now. He's showing him less and less respect as the round goes on. I love that right there. Fakes the left, fakes the right, hits him with the left hook, and then a right straight to the body as Lang tries to circle out. Big right hand. See, now he knows he's got him in trouble, so now he's just wading in. He's like, he's not respecting his space. Lovely little pull counter. Langford bobs. Lang does throws a nice tight uppercut, but Langford's, you know, that's not going to hurt him. Far too tough for that. Let me see what's going on down here in the comments. I see a few. Whichever way you want to go with it, random acoustic thoughts, scrapbook boxing. Yes, sir. Well, you know, I had it in my head that we were going to perhaps do it like we did our top 5 countdown on Langford, the NBL. And then we would go with the toughest seasons, because I think there's a lot of overlap in Greb's career, because he did his best work in the toughest seasons. Although later, when his eyesight was impaired, I suppose you could certainly take that into consideration when he didn't have the same mobility as when he was young. Maybe there were seasons that were so tough relative to his physical condition. But I just thought that was a different take than just measuring someone's accomplishments, which we could do. We could do a statistical, like most accomplished seasons, but I guess I feel like it's more an interesting puzzle because it would be much easier for me to pick Langford's 5 most successful seasons, but his toughest seasons in context. Yeah, I kind of like that, but you let me know, sir. Antonio says, random, one of my buddies is named Smooth Legends on YouTube. Does restoration unboxing footage and did 2 for Langford Jeanette. Langford v. Flynn. Oh, I bet I've seen that. I'm gonna go make sure I'm subscribed and show the love in the comments. Smooth Legends. Yeah, I always search for the old thing. People colorize them where they adjust the speed digitally. It's pretty awesome, boxing is getting into old school boxing. There is footage from it. This is 1911. So we have something. We have something from a fight that happened over 100 years ago. We're blessed. And you can see the way they're both fighting certain kind of fight. This isn't just guys banging, obviously. This is one of my favorite exchanges. Body, uppercut, and then catch and counter left hook. Because Langford was slung low and could fight from open stance, he's basically punching Lang so hard. Lang is being punched into, like, out of the way when he really lands it because there's so much power and it's coming from below. It's just very being tall. If you're being crowded like that, look at him cut the ring off. We were talking about this the other day. Multiple feints, throws the right, just keeps messing with the left and throws the right. Just brilliant. Scrapbook Boxing says Jack Blackburn, Jimmy DeFrost, Harry Wiley Sr., Eddie Futch, my 4 great trainers historically. Interesting. I know a tiny bit about Futch. I've heard you talk about Harry Wiley Sr. Jack Blackburn, I'm familiar with. Jimmy DeFrost. I'm going to have to look that up, Scrapbook. In fact, I bet you've talked about them on some of your videos. I'm going to have to search for that. So yeah, to circle back to the overall series. This is almost like an intermediate piece. I'm going to get off in a little while. But this, I just wanted to run a little bit of footage. I wanted to play those intro parts. In fact, I'm going to run that one more time. Why not? That training thing. This is good because this is one of the rare times you can see him kind of close up in video, and you can see how thick he is. Look how, because in some photos he looks lean, but this he wasn't fat in 1911. He's just thick. So when he did start to carry extra weight, it really showed on him because he was already so thick. I think that's a little younger right there, but he was a short guy. But when you see him close up, you realize his dimensions is quite formidable. Look at how long those arms are. Almost as long as Bill Lang's. Bill Lang is 6'1", like it's 5'7.5". The arms are real close, just an inch. And that's evident in some of the footage. You can see there, he's just a powerhouse with that gigantic chest. So on the one hand, it's a shame we don't have more Langford footage, but on the other, we're blessed to see anything. And I wish I could tell if that was Georgie Byers in the hat who comes into the session after Armstrong pushes Armstrong out. I think there's one more piece of it. Yeah. See, it kind of looks like him. He was older then. I mean, you can see him on the right there. I think that's from the year after. I think that's from perhaps 1912. He wasn't young. Georgie Byers was elite a decade before Langford. Well, roughly. I mean, he was. Oh, hold on, we got a comment here. Bruce. Oh, you were driving. Bruce, welcome back. Hey, I want to put this up from Scrap on the thing as well. We can leave that right up there, some wisdom from Scrapbook. And thank you, sir. Thank you, Scrap, for everything you do. And I appreciate this little heads up because I am going to go make sure I know plenty about these guys. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys coming. I'm keeping these informal because I tend to get over when I try to lay it down in a formal way. it starts to sound cheesy to my own ear. Whether or not it is, I don't know. I try to be like, put on the commanding voice and in 1911, Samuel Langford traveled to London. You know, that kind of, I start to feel like, remember Phil Hartman, he's passed, long past now, but Phil Hartman would do that sort of announcer voice. And I feel like that, like a parody of myself. So that's why I'm doing a lot of these informally, minimal notes, trying to talk to the chat a lot, just throwing stuff up at random. I don't want to be stuffy. I mean, we're talking about people fighting for money. So it's, obviously, okay, that's ironic to say because this event was like a more of a high society event. So it was stuffy. I don't know, catered, you know, silk clad, catered, you know, event with a military band. I don't know. Is that high class? But yeah, this next one in part 4, I'm going to actually have all the exchanges between them in the fight, isolated, clip by clip, with play at full speed once or twice, and then play it several times in a row and replay. And we're going to go as deep as we can go from this footage. Now, there are 2 other fights with more footage available of Langford's. There's Fireman Jim Flynn, their third fight the third fight, which occurred in 1910. 5 weeks after their second fight, and that's available. Parts of it, we're going to look at that, and then also the 10th fight between Sam Langford and the great Joe Jeanette. And there's a lot of footage in that fight, and it's very interesting to see because they know each other so well. So I'm looking forward to that, but I'm not rushing because there's a lot to do. There's a lot to look at for this. So there's one more part coming that I'm aware of for this series on this fight, and I will have like photos of Lang's opponents and photos of some of Langford's opponents, things like that. But I did want to do something. I just want to keep having some content because even if it's just you fellas who really really gonna want to see it, that's fine. It doesn't matter how many people do or don't see these. I'm getting it out. I'm going to celebrate what I want to celebrate. And so I really appreciate you guys being here. And I'm just going to pull up this graphic of Langford's overall 1911 because that is absolutely crazy. So, I'm talking about this fight. This is a big deal fight, right? He traveled from, Lang was already there. It was already 2 fights deep in England, but after going to the US from Australia. But, Langford was brought over. It's just a transatlantic fight. And, but you can see in his overall year, I mean, it's just one of many fights. I mean, Bill Lang is not in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying Bill Lang should be in the Hall of Fame. He shouldn't. But he's a contender. I mean, he contended for the world title. He also fought the great Jack Johnson and fought Langford. I mean, fought twice against Burns. So, I mean, he had some really, really high level fights. So respect to him, but he's not like a Joe Jeanette. You see, Langford already fought Jeanette in January. And I can't see because the live symbol is covering up, but he fought Atwater. I think that was in Utica, New York. Is it Utica or Utica? I don't actually know. I'm guessing maybe that's upstate New York. I don't really know. You got him out there in 3. I guess the guy was bigger, but I don't really know anything about it. I did a little search. I didn't find a picture of him or anything yet. If there's one in the newspaper archives, I will find one of him, but I haven't found anything yet. So then in February, he's already had 2 fights, one of them against an all-time great heavyweight. I mean, I personally have Joe Jeanette as a top 10, inside the top 10 all-time heavyweight. The guy was a machine. And, so Langford had already fought one of the greats of his generation. And then he beat up another guy. And then he fights Bill Lang. But even if he hadn't done that, like this is February 21st, April 1st, he's in Paris. He's fighting the great Sam McVeigh. He's fighting another great heavyweight. Sam McVeigh is among the tiniest handful of like upper echelon numbers of rounds fought against Hall of Famers. He's right up there. Just an incredible amount of time spent fighting generational greats. So he fights 20 rounds in Paris against Sam McVeigh, which is a draw. But he's still going, Holloway, Capone, Jack Fitzgerald, Farmer Smith, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. So Langford beating Philadelphia Jack O'Brien in August was kind of like Bill Lang beating up Bob Fitzsimmons in, I think that was, what was that, '09? Someone who's long past it, even if they're still good, but they're against, yeah, well, okay, so Langford was a lot more of a mismatch against Jack O'Brien because of how good Langford was, but Lang against Fitz, that was sort of, it's a little different. But Fitz and Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, both great fighters, legitimately great fighters. So get him past prime. Sometimes that happens, build someone up, get a payday. I mean, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien was very popular. He can make that money. He was always good with that. Fought a crazy schedule. His career is winding down at that point. Then Tony Ross. Then he fights Joe Jeanette again in New York. So he's already fought him in Boston. That I'm not sure how many fights that was at that in their running tally of fights, but he fights him again in September. So just to sum it up, he fights Jeanette and Atwater in the U.S. on the East Coast. Then he goes to England, fights Bill Lang. Then he goes to France and fights Sam McVeigh. Then he's back in New York fighting Ralph Colloway. Then he goes to Winnipeg, Canada to fight Tony Capone. And that's okay. So that's now he's halfway through June and he did all that. June 29th, he's in New York again, Jack Fitzgerald. Then New York again, Farmer Jim Smith. Two more in New York, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, Tony Ross. Two more in New York, the great Joe Jeanette, Tony Capone again. But then to close out the years, if he hasn't moved around enough, this dude now he's off to Sydney to fight a series. He fought a couple of the guys, but fight a series with the great Sam McVeigh. That's all just 1 year. Today, that's like, so say someone fought 3 times a year. That's still over 4. Is it? It's roughly 4 years work for a modern career. And pretty good, because like if you look at it, okay, so if you broke it up, 3 fights a year, fight Jeanette Atwater and Bill Lang in the same year. Well, that's a solid year. Great Joe Jeanette, a generational talent, and Bill Lang, who had contended for a world title. So you go to the next, say, just the next 3 fights. McVeigh, Calloway, and Capone. Okay, so only one of those fights, if that was a whole year's work, only one of those is like super epic. The next year, it would have been an easier year. Fitzgerald, Jim Smith, and a faded Jack O'Brien. But of course, this isn't his year to year. That's just sections of his year. It's 3-month sections, roughly. Quite remarkable. Now let me see. I'm going to jump over the comments. I hope I'm making some kind of sense here, guys. I really appreciate you being here. 86 Boxing, Aplo, Hyphy. Well, I appreciate you guys stopping by. We're just talking about Sam Langford. I'm just ranting on his 1911. So I mean, this fight that I've been doing this little series on. This was 2/3 of the way through February. He'd already had 2 fights. He fights Bill Lang in London. But then he's gonna, by mid-June, he's fought in Paris, New York, and in Canada. So like he goes London, Paris, New York, Canada, 4 fights in a row, just between February 21st and June 16th. Then he goes back to New York and does a run in New York until the end of the year when he goes to Sydney to fight Sam McVeigh. So he settled down. He settled down and had six fights in New York between June and October. He's not done for the year. December 26th, what's it, Boxing Day? Sydney, Australia, Sam McVeigh. Pretty crazy. So let's see. Do we have some comments? Yeah, 86 in there. Adolfo, what up, 86? I remember seeing Charles Sullivan video a while back, but I never subbed. You deserve it, but yeah, I gotta make sure I'm subbed to everybody who shows up in the chat. I need to get on the chat from my computer because I do this from my phone. Again, I prefer to try and improv these, and I apologize if I make mistakes. Like in part 2, BL Hardline was in the chat, and I said, "Oh yeah, I heard Hardline say that Dempsey might trouble Langford in the later rounds." That was something he said about Harry Greb versus Jack Dempsey, and I'm all like, he had to correct me, and I felt terrible. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. I can barely get words out of my own mouth. So anyway, so I've got this. So we just taken a peek at this 1 year for Langford. This like a whole career's worth of, or like the end part of somebody's career. Fought Sam, after this, like have some build up fights, 15 build up fights, then do this run, and there's a career. Finished in Sydney against McVeigh. Lost on points, retired. Langford's like, no, dude, I'm just getting going in this career. So let me see. I'm gonna pull up while I continue to just babble. I want to pull up this exchange. I actually pulled this up in part one, but I did want to. I think this is the formatted one. Yeah, I just want to throw that on the screen. That's beautiful. Digs left, digs right, punch up from the ground, uppercut just grazes him. But that right there, that's what Blackburn wanted Joe Louis to be able to do. Joe Louis could do it from a side stance because he was taller. He had to get down. Langford is already down. That is the blueprint right there. And the great Jack Blackburn, as scrapbook, as hardline, and I'm sure all you other guys who are interested in historical research, if you've been exposed to who Jack Blackburn was, then he was a serious dude. And he saw a lot in the ring, and saw a lot out of it, but he knew a lot. And sometimes it bothers me a little bit because I do feel like in the more casual conversation that I'm exposed to on Twitter, because a lot of MMA fans watch boxing, they and vice versa. Just sometimes, not all, but there are plenty who do, and they tend to talk to each other because they're more omnivores. Look at that, it's a bonding thing. Look at that, pink right over the. See, that's just butter. But people know Jack Blackburn was serious and saw a lot, and so he fought Langford early in his career a bunch of times, but he was still around. Until he went to jail for some years, but he came back. He was around. He knew what was up with Langford and Johnson, all this stuff, and how good Langford was. So that kind of move right there, when you see Joe Louis catch him with his rear hand and throwing that vicious left hook, that's what he's trying to do. Or I should say that this is a man who perfected it. And if we had, especially, because Langford fought a great deal of epic fighters, and he also fought some easier fighters, less experienced ones, where even though he was smaller, he had a big advantage over them. If we had footage of all of that, my goodness, because there's no telling how many people these kind of moves. We just have the bits that he broke out in the few minutes that we have on footage. We don't have like the whole how he would approach, like, say, a young Harry Wills, who's long and lean and training, but much less experienced in the ring, but really, really big. How would he have approached that the first time they fight? How about the next time? How about the next 10 times, 15 times? I mean, they had so many fights. So if we had all of that on film, it would be much easier for casual fans and observers to realize how epic and great his career was. As it is, it's, for fans of historical material, historical martial arts material, boxing history, it's easy to see, just looking at this 1 year, it's easy to see, and that photo, by the way, is from 1912. But it's easy to see, I believe, but it's easy to see how he was so held as such a mythical figure, like after he had retired. When he retired, it was a big deal. They did a big fundraiser for him for his eye surgery, but it was major news because they knew he was one of the all-time greats and from the prior generation. And so in the following eras where they were still fighting crazy schedules, and actually lots of guys were fighting crazy schedules and really they really had to go through some stuff to contend for a world title because the ratio of powerful fighters to world titles wasn't very high. They knew Langford was the dude. He was one of the key guys. So, and then later, he was more forgotten. But, there's great photos of Joe Louis standing with Langford, obviously with the Blackburn connection. But, Louis had natural power and ability, but Blackburn was brilliant and was able to take him, sort of sculpt him into just a destroying machine. Kind of like Cuss did with Tyson. When you get a guy who's gotten natural abilities, physical abilities, and then you give him the science. Because when Tyson was at his absolute peak, which wasn't that long, he was terrifying. But not everyone has a long peak. Some people, a lot of things went wrong in Tyson's life or with him that robbed boxing of a longer prime. But he was absolutely fantastic because he had natural ability and he also was superbly trained, had understanding of fight technique. So that's what Jack Blackburn was giving these various fighters. And I'm pretty sure from what I gather, Joe Louis was his primary focus. He had trained other great fighters, but Joe Louis was like his project. Just like with Cuss, like Cuss had Patterson, and but later he was like, this is it. It's all about Tyson. We're going to make him a champ. So it's interesting. I find like Langford's somewhat forgotten, although there's been like a rejuvenation of celebration about him. I guess the internet age finally caught up to that his info is out there. People like BL and Scrap who push in the EJ and other guys who talk about these great fighters, especially him. So it's starting to get out there, but Claymore's book, what a wonderful, again, I recommend this. Go get this. People don't talk about the trainers of the forgotten fighters. I mean, it's a struggle to get the forgotten fighters to be talked about. We're struggling, Langford on the left there, but what about the guys who were showing him the tricks of the trade, which included for him George Byers in the middle there, fellow Canadian, and Bob Armstrong on the right-hand side. Like Langford's been largely forgotten and only partly sort of rejuvenated his myth, but those guys are like, unfortunately, very much not remembered. So part of the effort to celebrate the greats is also celebrate the people who helped make them great. Like Scrapbook, you saying Harry Wiley Sr. I remember you, or was it Junior? But I remember you talking about Harry Wiley and like his experience and his massive influence in the sport. I'm gonna have to you did a good talk on that. I'm gonna have to go find it after this. And folks, search if you want statistical or like some like real data driven, just cool stuff, as well as other material, but a lot of stats. Search for hardline boxing talk, and then your subject within boxing, the athlete you want to hear about, or your subject. And if you want some really epic content, search Scrapbook Boxing, and then whatever within boxing you want to look for. And you'll find videos that Scrapbook's done on it. I need to go find some of these ones you did, but to circle back, people don't always get their credit, and the people who helped make them great. So like Wiley was involved in making people great. Well, Byers and Bob Armstrong they were involved in making Sam Langford great, as was Jimmy Walsh, especially early in his career when he first showed up in the gym. From my understanding, Jimmy Walsh was showing him a lot of things. But then Byers was fighting out of Boston. I guess he was probably fighting out of the same gym, fighting out of Lennox, but I'm not positive. But they became friends and they stayed together for many years. Not sure at what time Armstrong came into the picture because he was training a lot of other people. He was training at the highest levels and sparring at the highest levels after maybe he passed his prime as a fighter. But these guys were a team. It's good stuff. Let me go. In fact, Old Fitz is on the bottom there because he was Sam Langford's idol when he was a kid, according to Langford. But anyway, there you got, Byers and Bob Armstrong in their youth. You can see they're in incredible shape. They're both champion level fighters. Then the bottom left, you see them when they're a little bit older. That's when Langford was in his prime, but they were old. And in the bottom right is it's slow resolution, I'm afraid, so I made it small, but that's a hilarious photo. That's Langford in the middle. And on our right is George Byers, and to our left of Langford is Bob Armstrong. You'd be like, which one of these guys is the most dangerous contender in the sport to Jack Johnson's crown? I'm not sure I think that's in London, but I'm not sure if that's which trip to London that's from, that photo down there. But I always like that. You can see how long his arms are, especially in that long coat. He looks like a cartoon. He was very flamboyant, outgoing. So I'm going to leave that up and go jump over into the comments, see what's going on. Just get that spam out of there. Sorry, fellas. So random. Okay, so yeah, you guys are talking about the John L. Sullivan video. Rodolfo says, I don't do videos, but either way, keep the grind going. That's okay, Rodolfo. You show the love, man. That's very encouraging to people who are making content. Believe me. Antonio Mosley, Langford didn't just parry the punch. He ducked as well to make sure an opportunity of right from Lang wouldn't be there. His defense has multiple layers. Exactly, Antonio. You see, you get it. Yeah, exactly. Bruce says Jack had Joe Walcott. Yes, right. And apparently he had picked up some things from Troinsky when they got arrested. But yeah, he had Joe Walcott, the Barbados Wonder. Sometimes powerful fighters, they're not all remembered the same, but the lineage is powerful. Like Jack Blackburn isn't as famous as Joe Louis, but you couldn't have Joe Louis without Jack Blackburn. You could have Jack Blackburn without Joe Louis. He had already fought a rich career that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame as a fighter. I really wish they would do that. And by association, it further celebrates Joe Louis. So it's not like it's against the goals of, it's not like it's against the goals of what the Hall of Fame is doing. Hold on, my thing came unplugged. I don't know if my voice just jumped much louder. You guys let me know in the chat. Did my voice just get cartoonishly loud? Yeah, we got a little bit of bot spam, but very little. We're lucky. I don't want to put this up, Antonio, that you put. That's exactly it. So, and there are other instances, and I'm gonna arrange them in different groupings for part 4, for the finale, which will come in a few days, so that I'm gonna find all the instances of him catching with his right hand. Because sometimes okay, we're good. It just got a little bit louder. Okay, I'll try not to boom. I don't even know how long ago the headphone fell out. So I'm looking at the phone so intently. The fact that it wasn't plugged in, it didn't even register. I'm super dry too. I'm talking. Oh, thank you, Scrap. Yeah, I love all of those pictures. It's history, It's that's good. That's good coffee. Espresso with mint in it. Mint flavor. Keep the voice. See, I think definitely Antonio. And I'm actually. Oops, sorry. Let me go over here. I'm gonna actually pull it up. I appreciate you guys' patience. I said last time I'd be more organized, but with the snowstorm, the gigantic snowstorm, my schedule, my overnight job got shifted around a lot. In fact, I'm going in tonight. I'm not supposed to be going in tonight, but I'm going in overnight. So I was going to do this anyway. I was going to see it through because I'm excited. I love talking to you guys, but it's, I just didn't have an opportunity to sit down on the computer. Everything's been messed around because I do have to sleep in between my various jobs. That would be unfortunate if I didn't. I'm going to play that clip. Oh, that's right. I redid it with a longer. Here we go. No, that's something else. What's this? This is funny. I got so many of these. Okay, here we go. Yeah, exactly. You see, you called it. He ducks under, so he's not just batting it away and then that's it and throwing a counter. He's way smoother than that. Boom, comes right over the arm too. And that's something. His left hook. He credited George Byers with getting his left hook just right. That is just right. I mean, George Byers, I think, was a little bit taller than Langford, though I'm not positive. Maybe they were close. I think Langford was a little bit shorter. But Byers fought at heavyweight, so he would have fought bigger guys than himself. And, Langford had experience fighting like Joe Walcott and Peter Jackson and Joe Gans. And he's very Blackburn, these very technical, powerful fighters, different combinations of technique and power, but they were all dangerous. He fought so much danger and speed. And that's partly why he's able to school Lang. Like, it doesn't matter how fast Bill Lang is with his body mass. He's not Joe Gans fast. He's not Joe Walcott fast. A lot of guys that Langford had already fought. So Langford has an epic chin. It's important to note as often as possible. Sam Langford had an epic chin. So that's what let him be up at heavyweight. Size-wise, it's wild that he was there at all, for real. All right, so I'm going to play, while I look at the comments, I'm going to play through my little ring entrance bit, and then I'll play the video. Let's see. Oh, it's just guys all saying hello and hello. Yeah, it's really great to have you here. I've been going just over an hour. I'm not going to go too much longer. And my phone's trying to run out of juice. I gotta plug it in. Just want to play that. So I thought it was interesting, and we're very blessed that we have the footage of this event, because that's quite notable, right? So the first time in England that significant number of women attended a boxing match. It was also, they had like a catered event. They walked out to a military band, a full-size military band. And I'm trying to remember what I think it was like 7,000 or 8,000 people there. I can't actually quite remember. But certainly you can see in the front row at a minimum, people are dressed up. Dudes in tux and tails, looks like. So, it's like a big deal fight between two top guys, but one of them is like the upper echelon. But this was supposed to sort that out. I mean, Lang's size, he was the betting underdog, but from what it said in Clay Moyle's book, I believe he said that the crowd in attendance, they were in favor of Lang. And so like the real boxing heads, they knew where to put their money, that it would affect the betting line by fight time. But in general, people like, look how big Lang is. And maybe some of the inherent racism among the racists, like also like, oh, he can't do it. So you just have a thing. I don't know. They're like hitting fighters like colored fighters, that they were weak in the body, but you couldn't hurt them in the head. I thought it was weird. That was true of certain fighters. I think I saw that said of Bob Armstrong, that he might have been vulnerable in the body, but it's like, it's not a rule. But people had weird ideas at the time. A lot of racism is ignorance, often malice, but it's definitely ignorance. So in this time, they have some weird things. And one of the things that really bothers me is that they had an expression, a white heart. So there was a time when Langford, now I don't know if he actually said it or if whoever was editing the article that he was doing the interview put it in there, because it could happen. But where he was saying basically, I have a white heart, give me a shot and I know I can succeed. He just wants a title shot. But having to say you have a white heart to meaning you're a good person, language controls thought, which is why we want to teach people to be critical thinkers, so they can think their way around the shaping of language and understand what's really being discussed and how it's being discussed. So you're not just responding to propaganda like as intended. You don't want to be willing to just be manipulated so much. And that's why also as I'm studying this footage, I'm not taking everything I read about Langford or that people say about it. I'm not just assuming it's all true. Like, as I get more and more into the research, I'll get better at judging. Like one project I had in mind, for example, was like with newspaper decisions, to try and figure out who the reporter was the primary reporter for, like, say, a certain paper, like the Boston Sunday Post, who's going to the fights, who's scoring these decisions, and then start trying to maybe get a sense of if certain writers or certain newspapers had a tendency to score for certain fight style. like in Philly, like the whole thing about come forward fighters, they liked that. So I'd be interested to know who the writers were. Maybe that might be difficult information to find. I'd be really interested in that. Rodolfo says, this is just amazing. The fact we see the ring announcer introduce the fighters. I know, and he's dressed up too. It's interesting that it's such a bloodbath of a fight, but they're all very proper. Just interesting juxtaposition of the, it actually reminds me of it's not quite the same, but it reminds me of some of the fights in Japan, at least the mixed martial arts fights in Japan. The crowd, there are exceptions, but generally the crowd just sits politely. They gasp or cheer when something big happens, and they're knowledgeable. The Japanese fan base is fight fans are more knowledgeable on the whole. It seems like in mixed martial arts, like they know to gasp when like a certain positional change happens. They know what that leads to. More of them do. So you get a response in the crowd, but the rest of the time they're nice and quiet. So this would be like, you could really hear, I'm sure, Langford, just the thuds of Langford's punches. So let's see. Adolfo says a boxing YouTuber called Showbiz the Adult said it best. Racism is an asshole's insecurity. Yeah, I think there are different yeah, that's a great quote. I think there are different reasons for racism, as in it's also like how we would define racism, but treating people differently solely because of you think you know something about them because of what they look like. That just means you haven't met enough people, I would say, or the people who do that. I'm not saying people who don't meet a lot of people aren't any good. I just mean the people who are racist. Oftentimes, they don't really know. They don't have a big sample size. They don't understand how much there is to know about people and all the different cultures in the world and the history of the world and the larger context of this life. And so they're just kind of like, it's scary, it's different. So I joined the club. That's called Planet Earth. Cultures are different, but it's fine. We're all much more similar than we are dissimilar. And it is difficult to sort of, what's the term, thread the needle, like to navigate studying boxing history, which back then it did reflect the racial tensions of the time very, very clearly, but without focusing solely on that. Because as far as because I'm also trying to figure out, like, they were dealing with it. Like, there are people today who deal with adversity, maybe not the same kind, of course, but the way people navigate, I still want to focus on what they're actually doing. So these are two guys having a fight. They're having a big fight. It's a high profile fight, making good money for the time. And it's an important fight as far as the chase for a shot at Johnson. So, I mean, the top contender, Langford, is fighting a guy who's fought for the world title and has a winning record since he lost to Tommy Burns. Overall, Australian champ. So if he can just get Langford out of there. So that explains why McIntosh, if that story is accurate, why he put the rabbit fur to soften the gloves, pad the gloves. They really want this. This means a lot of money. This is gigantic if he can win. This is right in the heat of the white hopes. But, in spite of all the gamesmanship and the various, like some of the unsavory quotes, I still want to just give credit. Like, these are two athletes having a fight, And even though Lang is hopelessly outclassed, he's still in there. He didn't go and sew the gloves in. He didn't go make the gloves, He's out there doing his best. He's getting beat up, but I would love to see, the more I think about it, the more I think that if this was all that was released at the time, it would probably, if McIntosh controlled it, it would be in character for him to only release the parts of the fight that don't look too horrifically one-sided. Throw in a knockdown in there just to keep people happy, but not show, because the writing about the fight was that it was absolutely vicious beating. So this looks like the early parts of the rounds. They clipped out part of the first round. So this is just parts of the first, I guess, 3 rounds. But it's somewhat competitive. So it'd be interesting to see like the late rounds, how it would have gone. But I do think it's fantastic having just having access to this footage. Like I usually watch it on my phone, but sometimes at night I'll put one of the three fights of Langford or some other, or like one of Canzoneri or McLaren's fights on the smart TV and just kind of chill and just watch it on a larger screen. I'm not sure which I like most. I like holding the phone. But it is interesting to see, just try to try to understand what it was like, the texture of the time. Like this is a very unique room to be fighting in. Thousands of people, but it's like a formal event. I mean, even the ushers are highly dressed up, which is pretty wild. This has got to be, this stuff looks like it would be from early in the fight because you don't really see a lot of blood. You don't see Lang really bloodied from this distance. If he was really bloody, that would have been, you'd be able to kind of see it a little bit. So this must be early in the fight. There's that lovely combo. Oh my gosh. But when I come in, for part 4, I'm coming in swinging. It's going to take me a little while because there's a lot of different exchanges in this fight. It's dozens of them, but I'm going to clip them all. When I finish clipping them all, I'm going to jump on and do the live, or I'll schedule it when I know when I'll be done. Because things like this, like these multiple feints, we need to watch that full speed like that. Well, we need to also watch it at half speed and quarter speed and really understand like the footwork and what's going on there. And I would clip it there and go to the next exchange. That's the end of that half of the. So if that was that half, then this is probably the other half. Unless that's it. I think that's the other half. Let me jump over the comments. Hardline in the chat. What's up, Hardline? Antonio, Hardline, Rodolfo. See, this is just so nice. I appreciate all you guys a lot. I know that it's probably frustrating being like the YouTube boxing community, like because of some of the trolling or some of the lack of respect for the old school. So, yeah, so this is the Langford slow motion clip, but the people who do appreciate this stuff, the richness of this era, really appreciate it. Because I've seen the other stuff. I've seen like the Tyson, Ali, and the different documentaries on different notable fighters. I'm really see Langford. He switched. He got his head over on the other side. Keep away from that right. But Langford's like, no, I'm not throwing it. What I was saying is like the people who do the old school material, the people who do appreciate that, it's to a very large degree. It means a lot. It's like fine dining compared to, I like, I'm not going to say anything bad about fast food or just whatever, it's food, but it's like McDonald's is good, right? But this is fine dining. This is like cuisine. Being able to study this historical footage and these, I'm sorry. Look at that. That's so intelligent. You see, I mean, this is an absolute master boxer. This isn't some random guy, no pun intended. Like he's got broken rhythm. I guess one of his moves too, when he was setting guys up with the right in his fights in general, he's setting weaker opponents up with the right hand, the right hand, the right hand. But if he could finish him with the right, he would. But then he'd do a thing where he'd like Archie Moore throw on the half beat. So he'd start to throw the right, and then he would unleash the vicious left hook, condition someone to fear his jab, fear hitting him. He'd said that he would drive them toward the ropes. He'd force them to lead. If they didn't lead, he'd run them out of the ring. And you see it with Lang. He's walking him down, and then when Lang leads, he either counters. This is Federici, Alfredo. Exactly, Rodolfo. It is. This is high art. And other fights are fun. But like Jake Paul fighting Tyrone Woodley is cool, but that's like a crayon drawing. I actually enjoyed the very end of their rematch. I won't lie. That was a great face plant. They got given knockout of the year by some ESPN ringside, I think. But that's, that's politics and money. They're like, we love money. That's money knockout of the year. But this stuff right here, this is gold. Being able to see Langford, you see, he keeps stuffing. So I'm going to put them all together in a row in slow motion. All the when he's batting, see, he's always ready. Right there, you see him. He put his right hand up like he was going to block the jab, and then he just went ahead and unleashed the left hook. It's different, it's like feinting with the baseball bats, right? It's dangerous. Yeah, he looked like he was going to hit me, and then fading, looking like you're going to shoot somebody. That's what the Langford's power. That was the difference it made. KO was great. Not going to lie, the KO was great. I'm not buying the pay per view. I just saw the highlight of the KO. I figured it would be a bad fight, but someone would get caught. And it's fine. People got entertained. It made people money. People like money. Lots of people eat off the business. Antonio Mosley says, one major misconception about Langford era of boxers, they didn't throw combination. The masses believe Jack Dempsey started using combinations, which isn't true. Oh, that hurts my soul. I thought it was interesting that Dempsey, I had seen in a couple places that Dempsey became more popular when he lost to Gene Tunney. Because Gene Tunney was kind of like the intellectual dude and like rolling with authors and poets and things. So Dempsey became the everyman, like in people's eyes, even more so, and increased his popularity. So maybe that has something to do with why he's so celebrated. Con Shonry in the chat. Con, what's up, sir? Welcome, welcome. Hardline says, Antonio, yes, what you said about Dempsey being first is totally untrue. I don't know where some people get their delusions. For real, though. Yeah, I'd say Antonio and Hardline, you guys understand. It's, I mean, it's been, the thing is, what do we call a combination? Because, I mean, we're talking about people punching each other. So you have two fists. The idea that people didn't think to do one quickly next to the other or even add a third one, like people aren't stupid. They didn't have technology to build on and to learn when they were kids. So in one sense, they didn't have everything we have today, but people aren't stupid just we go back 100-something years. Yeah, there's a lot of money and personal safety involved in knowing all subtleties of fighting. Masterful boxers who perhaps competed under slightly different rules with smaller gloves and things. But the refinement of technique, if anything, was more in those days. They did not have distractions. And there were a lot of fights to be had, a lot of training other people for a lot of fights. Yes, Khan, it's really great having you here. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone listening after the fact. We're just ranting. This is part 3. Parts 1 and 2, you can find on my channel. This is part 3. I haven't run this in a few minutes. I'm going to run this again because this was what gave me such trouble to get online. And that orange in the border is the same orange as the orange on the orangey red on Nat Fleischer's Black Dynamite book series, The Great Black Fighters of that era. One book in that series, I think it's a 5-part series. I have one of those books, but I haven't read it yet. I might even just photograph it just to read it so that I don't handle it because my Clay Moyle book has been destroyed. Not maliciously, but it's really beat up. Like it's been opened so much to. So when I'm on the move, I can't take the book with me. So I photo pages. I read them on the move, reread them. I've read a lot of that book over and over. I don't have the best memory, so just like with Scrapbooks videos and Hardlines videos and some of these other videos I love on YouTube, I watch them a lot. So I don't like to watch crap. So when I know something's good, it's worth a second, third, fourth watch. And some of these videos, like some of BL's countdowns, Hardlines countdowns, I've seen 10, 15 times. just keep soaking it in and just get it in my brain, and just because I'm trying to get to where I can talk about things more conversationally, and that involves for me a lot of soaking in the material. So that's partly what this series is. That's why I'm in the archives. I'm just trying to learn. But these chats are great because I learn a lot in the chat from you guys. You guys hook it up. I appreciate that. So let's see. I see there's some stuff going on in the chat. Let me just, I'll throw out the intros again. Another thing that gave me a pain. I think my connection was bad. I'm on the house Wi-Fi now. It seems to be working okay. No harm, no foul. Hopefully my audio is okay and it's not breaking up when I move or do something. So let's see. Let's go over the comments. Let's see what everyone's talking about. And I love it when you guys are just wishing each other the best and hoping everyone's having a good day. I mean, that means you got to support each other. Keep it positive. I mean, fighting's serious business, but being a fight fan doesn't mean being like sour and sort of like, I don't know, being negative. Life is good. Every day is a gift. Every day drawing breath is a gift. Okay, so let's see. Rodolfo says, yeah, the Japanese crowds are very respectful. Yeah, and I do like that. It's different. You know, I like both. I like rowdy crowds too. The Dublin crowd, they're mental. There's a Bellator event in February in Dublin I'm really looking forward to. This is mixed martial arts. And it's the best crowd they ever had. Several of the best crowds, probably their top 3 best crowds of all time, were all in Dublin for different events. They should probably just move and do 5, 6 events in Dublin every year. Those guys go crazy from the first prelim, the opener of the show on like a 10 or 11 fight card, sometimes a 15 fight card or something, or maybe 13 fights. From the first fight, those guys are crazy and drunk. I respect that too. So different flavors in combat sports. This must have been a very dry crowd. So anyway, Hardline says, random, my greb year is choosing to be finished tomorrow. I better get a move on then. I've narrowed it down to 7 years. So, and I have a sense of the order of some of it, but man, this is difficult. Then I'm going to have to type up some slides. I'll do them in the manner of our live chat on, which I thank you very much for coming and doing our live chat. I'll do it in the same way. If I have time, I'll put up a graphic, have a nice photo of Greb, then I'll have everything he did that year, obviously in a small font. 86 Boxing says, yeah, it's pretty. I'm going to stick that up here. Boom, respect to Hardline. 86 Boxing says, yeah, it's pretty amazing having this Langford footage. Even that going back to Courtney. Yeah, it's one of those, you know, it's bittersweet, but I just try to focus on the sweet. Like, oh my goodness, this happened so long ago. So many great things in sports history, or just in history in general, especially, just aren't there at all. So if you have something, you have more than nothing, which is what exists in terms of film footage for most of history, most of human history. So that's pretty special. Okay, so let's see. Let me go down. Tonio says, well, Hardline, when people don't do the proper research and leave out the context on why boxers back then didn't do certain things compared to modern fighters. That's an excellent point, Antonio. That is an excellent point. I mean, I found out a lot when I started to research it. I never had too strong of opinions before because I knew I didn't know a lot. But the more I researched it, the more I realized how little I knew. And I had to sort of learn things over, because the myths, things people get credit for, have been around. Hardline asks if my greb years are ready. Yeah, I'm very close. I do not have the graphics ready, although I have the photos picked out, but I haven't typed up the years yet. Now, Hardline, you can let me know, are we going to share our top 5s with each other? Like, maybe not the order, but which years there are, so I can prepare a graphic for them? Or shall I just prepare some sort of picture graphic for each year with not necessarily having the record on? I don't know if I'm going to have time to type up Greb's whole career. Was that 299 fights? Maybe I could. I'd like to. We'll see. We'll stick a pin in it. Now I'm going to come back to the chat, but let me just jump over here and put some more footage on. Listen to me talk. We could be watching these guys fight. This, I think, is the full speed footage. Here we go. All right, back to the chat. Let's see where we're at. Antonio says, look at Bill Lang, for example. He was moving around quickly by stepping, not hopping like Ali, since stepping allows for better positioning and balance. Yeah, I've seen Jack O'Brien do that too. Ali was extra special. He was breaking some rules. He was like Picasso. Like people are like, oh, Picasso, like chaotic looking art. Well, he could draw his ass off. He could do realistic artwork. He was choosing to break those rules. A lot of these great artists, they were choosing to do that. Rembrandt, like late period Rembrandt, where he's just caking up the paint and stuff. People are like, well, where are the lines? He's choosing to do that. Rembrandt's the greats in several media. You know, he did these engravings that, but like, you know, obviously oil paint is the most famous thing. But like in his day, he was doing a lot of different stuff. He was great at many things. These guys choose to do, and I guess I forget why I even brought that up initially. But in this, in the context of fighting, you know, Langford's approaching this fight a certain way. He wouldn't necessarily walk everyone down like this. He wasn't stuck to only fight one way. He did need to close the gap because he was short. But the way he's stepping square and stuff, I doubt he would step square to Sam McVeigh, who was much more powerful than Bill Lang and hit harder. So, you know, we're seeing a very specific approach. That doesn't mean he couldn't do the other stuff. And we see glimpses of other stuff Langford can do in the Jim Flynn fights, where Flynn is trying to fight a lot from the clinch. And then the Jeanette fight, where we see Jeanette with this dynamic jab, high and low. And we see how Langford, but they already knew each other very well. It would be so great to see more footage of Langford. But what we do have, we have him versus three different kinds of fighters. Lang sort of, this one's under very clean rules, clean breaks, stuff like that. No standing over the opponent. Jim Flynn, the third Jim Flynn fight from 1910, they're doing plenty of clinching, tons of it. And then the Jeanette fight's a bit of a mix. Obviously, Jeanette's the all-time great in those three opponents, but it's good to have anything. In an era this rich, you could be really, really good and just be a fringe guy, because there are so many great fighters. Who knows what some of these guys' record would be if they didn't, you know, if it wasn't so stacked. Same with like Muhammad Ali's era, the general era he fought in. You know, if you took him and Frazier out, well, a lot of these other guys wouldn't have as many ass kickings on their resume that they received. That's how it goes. So let's see, let me stop rambling. Yeah, Hardline agrees with Antonio. Yeah, absolutely. Jack O'Brien is doing that there. They're trying to keep their weight under them, especially, you know, the game plan to be mobile. I would love to see some footage of Jeff Clark. I'm sure BL agrees. Scrap and everyone like see Jeff Clark moving around the ring. That would be something to see. Someone with his experience at the highest levels, jabbing and moving. But Jack O'Brien was, from the footage I saw with him, I think it was a long fight with Tommy Burns. It's on YouTube, search for it. But Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, he was doing it a lot better than Lang here. And he was also leaping in with shots and leaping into clinch and firing shots from the clinch. Lang doesn't have that opportunity. Not that he would do well if both fighters were allowed to fight from the clinch. Langford was ridiculously dangerous in those positions because of his long arms. Like if he was allowed to, he could just get real close, right? He's got his head under Lang's chin, hold him with one arm and just punch him in the kidneys with his other arm until he wilts. That's what he did to, I think his fights with Dixie Kid. I think that's how he got him both times, just melting him with body shots. Hardline or Scrapbook would know better than me, but I think that's what I remember. Con Connery says the fanfare and stature of Dempsey did grow post-defeat because it added that relatable layer of humanity. Exactly. He was no longer this Herculean figure, so it did help ingratiate him to the public. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'd seen, how I'd seen it described, that that it's sort of like a big image rehab for him, even though he was already like a star. But it was like suddenly they were for him because Tunney was seen as aloof, you know, maybe like a bit too scientific, a bit too, you know. Dempsey was cast in the other light. See, Antonio Mosley says Langford boxed more methodical and technical and made moves when needed to. No wasted energy or motion. Yeah, exactly. You see it in this fight. He's not like jumping and bouncing around. Like you see guys reset with a bounce, you know, like they're showing the crowd and the judges, I'm still energetic. Spend a lot of energy over the course of a fight always doing that. Langford's not doing any of that. When Lang pushes him back, they push each other off. He just walks in. So he's not getting tired bouncing around trying to prove something that doesn't have anything to do with fighting. I like that about watching Rocky Marciano fight. It's just workmanlike. He just comes in and gets it done. Now, Langford's more of a showman than Marciano, but both of them have that in common. They're not really wasting a lot of energy in the fight. Because when Langford's putting on a show, that means he's turning it up on somebody. That is entertaining. He doesn't have to like dance around. And I mean, there is something to be said for the entertainment factor of dancing around, or someone who can win while doing it, like the Ali shuffle, the lesser known Jersey Joe shuffle, where he'd present each shoulder and he'd do that whole thing and he had his own shuffle, you know, and then Ali had one later. So like these guys have moves, they have like flashy signature moves and things like that. That's cool. And maybe Langford did have some. I haven't really seen it written of, other than the fact that he could do everything and he was very versatile. But who knows when he was some of these fights where he's so far ahead, if he was carrying guys and like really holding them up. So let's see. Hardline says, yes, I think we should share it, but it would be easier to do picture graphic for each year due to numbers of fights he had some years. Yeah, I'll find a way to do it. I might do a separate one, do like a photo montage from, if I can find some different pictures from him that year, Hardline, and then, but it might just have to be just typing up the graphic. I can probably do that. It's almost 300 fights, but see, I think we're going to have a lot of overlap because he did have a concentration of extra epic years. So that's why I was thinking, you guys don't need to tell me the order of the years, but if I know your list and Scrapbook's list, and I'll have my list, and just like I did with our Langford talk, we had some overlap. So I only did, I think, 8 slides for our top 5. I think that's what it was. So maybe we'll get something like that again. And that's much more manageable, even though it is still hundreds of fights, or almost 200 fights probably, but anything that helps me get it through. But you let me know. You guys let me know. Conchanery, we need more guys that collected archival fight footage, but unfortunately they're few. Maybe because the boxing community itself is a relatively small group. Yeah, combat sports are on the fringe. I mean, that wasn't always the case, and they still pierce the mainstream, but not like it used to be. Sports as a whole are bigger, and there's so many different things competing for people's attention that are themselves very carefully crafted, especially like franchise sports, like team sports that, like with fighting, the fighter gets old, and that's it for him. With the team, they get new people on the team, and so the brand, the franchise, the individual franchise keeps going. Hardline says Langford's left hooks are sneaky. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I'm going to put some slow motion Langford on. There, this should be slow motion Langford. Yeah, Langford, I wish we had more, but I am going to collect. So eventually, when I finish these 3 series on the 3 fights, this, I believe, will be capped at 4 parts. The big finale, unless it's just too long. But then the next series I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go to the Jim Flynn fight, I think it was May. No, March 1910. I think it was late March 1910. But either way, I'm going to the 3rd Jim Flynn fight. I'm going to do the same kind of thing for that. Do maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 part series on that fight with footage and photos. And for that fight, there was a lot of newspaper coverage. I didn't go into the newspaper clippings for this because formatting would be tough. I've had a busy few weeks, but I will have an opportunity to do that for the Jim Flynn fight, and especially for the Jeanette fight. That's going to be the finale for this three series go. It's because there's a lot of exchanges in the Jeanette fight. But we're going to go do the same thing, and I'm going to work my way up to the Hall of Famers fighting each other. This is him fighting a contender. And then Flynn was a former contender. And then we're going to go to the great Joe Jeanette. Let's see. Con Connery says Jim Jacobs had one of the largest film collectors and even overdubbed his own voice doing commentary on many classic fights. He's the reason how come Tyson became so well versed in the history. That's his voice on all those things, because there's a lot of stuff up I've seen. That they redo the commentary and put in some crowd noise. Those are so entertaining. Credit to Jim Jacobs. Respect. Dolfo says, I know Tyson had access to footage, but I didn't know who he got it from. Dolph says, oh man, the Jersey Joe shuffle. Yeah. I didn't know that existed. Then I saw it. I was like, oh, saw someone reference it. I was like, okay. That's why sometimes it's good to read and study broadly, like with this Langford project, rather than just trusting any one source. I'm trying to find out gradually, just find out more and more about everything broadly, as well as getting very specific into the details, because there are things like, rather than just getting a little bit too zoomed in, I'm also backing up to try and understand the texture of the times, because it does explain some of the politics and some of the things, like with this, like where they billed Langford as the world light heavyweight champ. Well, he wasn't, but the champ, I think, was Jack O'Brien technically, and hadn't defended it, hadn't bothered to. So at that time, so they just clicked. But like understanding why things like that could happen at the time and why it did or didn't matter, or hurt or help them, whichever it did. It takes some broader understanding. The reffing and judging criteria, the fact that like what they're expected to do in this ring, the fact that the gloves were switched out, that he could get away with that in those days. McIntosh could. I don't know if Bill Lang knew about it or if it was just McIntosh's idea. Who knows? You take everything with a grain of salt, but try to search broadly, and then the truth seems to emerge. You start to see overlapping information that appears to be correct. It's lovely to have some footage so we can see some things. I wish we had that military band. Let's see, 86 Boxing, Con Connery. I heard he had a large catalog. I recall Telly Atlas mentioning film. He included Greb in that mix. I wonder if he actually saw footage. Oh my goodness. So what happened to that collection? Did something happen to that? Is this going to be a heartbreaking thing to find out? I remember Tyson mentioning Rosenblum. Now I was thinking, at the first time I saw it, I was thinking, reading about it, but I wonder if there was some of that in there. He was in an interview. He was talking about guys he liked to watch. He mentioned Rosenblum. That would be epic. The only footage I've seen of Maxie Rosenblum is from his film career that followed his fight career, and he had so many fights himself. Con Connery, many people believe that Ali debuted his shuffle in the Cleveland Williams fight. There's footage of him doing it back to the amateurs. Yeah, and I wonder where he got the idea of having a shuffle. Like, when was Jersey Joe a prominent boxer? People. It's like there's such a rich lineage of people borrowing ideas and expanding on ideas. I mean, I'm saying Jersey Joe. Well, his name comes from Barbados Walcott, the Barbados Wonder. So, there's a lineage. I remember I was on Twitter and I mentioned Barbados Walcott, and someone said, "Oh, Jersey Joe, this and this," and I said, "No, this is a different one." And he said, "That's annoying." That was his response when I was just clarified who it was, and I was thinking, I thought it was interesting. Like, he was bothered that there were two people to remember the same name, rather than being, it's just some guy. It's just one guy on Twitter. But I just thought it was interesting, because when I found out there was another Joe Walcott, whose name was actually Joe Walcott, because I didn't know Jersey Joe wasn't named that. I didn't know his name was Raymond. Raymond Cream, I think it was. So like Ray Cream would have been kind of a cool name. But when I found out, I was just amazed. I was like, oh, that's cool. So he took the name in tribute. But for some people, it's too much. They're like, oh, it's not easy to digest. Well, it's a lot of complicated texture going all the way back. So let me see what else is there. Box Hardline says, I agree, there'll be a lot of overlap. Yes, sir, there will. This might even be where we have the same 5 years. I found this a little easier than Langford because less years, and Langford had, how many years did Greb fight for? Was it 14 or 15? I can't remember. Forgive me. But Langford, it would have been hard to make. I would have still felt some guilt narrowing it down to his top 15 seasons, the amount of years that represent Greb's whole calendar year career. So with Greb, I find, at least so far, getting it down to the top 7 has been a lot easier than with Langford. I was having trouble making the top 10. Did you get that as well, Hardline? Where you're trying to. I did. With Greb, it's been a little easier. So I'm going to work to get that finished within, like, say, 2 days, 3 days, and typed up. Dolpha says, LOL, talking about the Ali Shuffle. His grandson did it in the last fight past Saturday. Yeah, he did. That's cool. Hey, that's family. If he wants to do it, you can do it. If someone else wants to do it, fans would probably love to see it if they could still win the fights. People clown and lose. Okay, well, that's cool. But clowning and winning, that's where it's at. 86 Boxing, Conchon, I heard he had a large catalog. I recall Teddy Atlas mentioning watching film. Oh, I already read that. See, I'm accidentally scrolling up. I'm sorry, fellas. Or we could have just mentioned Greb, not actually having seen footage, don't know. Tyson used to watch lots of fights involving Ted Kid Lewis, for example. I'm not sure where the collection is now. I think Steve Lott may be custodian, but I can't remember. We need to contact Steve Lott. Like, Steve Lott, man. Break open the archives, brosif. 86 Boxing, did you say Greb? Yeah, pretty. Conchonry says, yeah, pretty remarkable. Customato would send for films to be shipped from where Jayco's warehouses then at the request of Tyson. Oh my gosh. Imagine everybody like, okay, give me 2 Rosenblums and a Greb. I wonder if that, I might have to dig and try and find out who has that collection. What's going on with that collection? My goodness. I'm drooling. My mouth is watering thinking about that. Let me get some coffee. Especially as I'm reading all these comments. You guys have a great conversation. I did want to do it justice and read it out loud because sometimes I listen to live streams and don't have an opportunity to watch while I'm listening. So for people who are doing that, that's why I'm reading through the comments. Okay, 86 Boxing says, at Rodolfo, yes, but I was researching some stuff and I don't know that Jacobs actually found any Greb fight footage. I think the only thing is that newsreel. Conchiner says Jim Jacobs was Mike Tyson's manager along with Bill Caton, previous to his involvement with Don King. Rodolfo says 86 Boxing, man. 86 says it would be cool to see film with Rosenblum. Crazy we don't have any. Some of these guys who had a high amount of fights. Yeah, and I heard also they pirated the silver out of the silver nitrate film reels during World War II. A lot of it. That's what I'd heard. That's why a lot of it's gone. Not just from boxing, but from film in general. What a tragedy. Conshiner says Arnold, I believe. I don't know what that means, but I am particularly stupid. You just clarify, or if whoever it was aimed at knows, that's all good. Dolfo, the more the merrier. Love old school fighters' names. In fact, they would add where they're from. Yeah, I love all the different ways guys would name themselves. Conshiner, Jersey Joe was such a great boxer and gave Joe Louis a lot of trouble. He could box, he could move, and he had that signature sneaky left hook that was almost like an uppercut. Yeah, like a shovel hook. Would you call it a shovel hook? But yeah, I'm not sure what the term was, but yeah, he could really throw it. Hardline. I'll check with Scrapbook tomorrow, see if he's getting close. Yeah, that's cool, and I'm not rushing you guys at all because I'm just going to be working my way through this series. In between, I'm still like my channel's a couple years old. I've had it, but I haven't really done much. Did a little bit of MMA animated stuff, but never really settled on what I wanted to do. So now my channel's only just started going. So I did cracking the BL code. You can find the playlist on my channel, folks, if you want to see. I was trying to predict the Boxing Librarian's updated top 1,000 boxers of all time. I was trying to predict the top 15 out of 1,000, and when he had added an opposition rating, a new way to balance the rankings. So we did a series. I did 3-part series prediction, and then we did a live chat. That's all in that playlist on my channel. Feel free to check that out. And then I did like a long hour and something informal rant on Langford's rapid rise, 1902 1903. Find that on the channel. Seems like a lot of people have been watching that in the last few weeks. And then I've done some, and then I've done this series and only a couple of things. I'm just getting into live streaming, but as I get better with this program, I'll have a lot of material coming out that I can do on the fly, even if I can't be at home. Load it into the browser and StreamYard, and then run it from my phone on the move. Because I'm at an hour and 50 minutes. I usually don't have a lot of time to be in one place. It's all good. Let's see, Antonio Mosley. I would like to see footage of Elmer Violent Ray, more footage of Jimmy Slattery and Roy Tiger Williams. I'm going to throw on the intro to their fight again, just to have something while I read the comments. Jersey Joe born Arnold Raymond Cream. Conshiner says, yeah. I just Googled it because it was bugging me. Yeah, Arnold Raymond Cream. I think in my tiny brain, I often redo it to Raymond Arnold Cream. But Ray Cream, if he wasn't gonna, or Arnie Cream, Arnie Cream, that dude's the fire. Yeah, he did a good thing, man, because Jersey Joe Walcott has a nice little alliteration at the beginning, and then it's got like a famous last name from legendary guys. So I'm sure in his day that resonated with people beyond him being a interesting fighter to watch fight. 86 Boxing says, I talked to Steve Smoger once, and he mentioned starting his pro officiating career under Jersey Joe. Small world. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, it's funny, the lineage. There are gaps in the lineage because for various reasons, but stuff from Langford's day and even before Langford's day has made it all the way down through this way and that. Scrapbook could attest to that because I think Harry Wiley, I think he said he used to wrap Sam Langford's hands at one point. Going back and then having all this involvement. I could be wrong on that. I think that's what I heard. Maybe one of you guys can let me know. But yeah, I would like, there were some fights I would want. I could even just narrow it down to like Langford fights. If you were like, pick any 3 fights. Okay, well, I want to see Langford Walcott in 1904. And I want to see the second fight in Boston with Jeanette. I'm not sure which fight that was, but that was the one the newspapers called the greatest fight that had ever happened in the city. I think it was the second fight in Boston he had with Jeanette. And for my third, why don't you guys sound off in the chat? What if you could have 3 fights from history that we don't have? What would you have? I'm stumped on my last one because there are some other fights I wouldn't mind seeing. Oh my goodness. The first Johnson Langford fight. I'm not saying it had to be filmed. First Johnson Langford fight, little Langford and Johnson schooling him, and just to see him stay in there for the duration. Now, just to touch on what else I'll be doing on my channel, I've got some different things going on. But one of the things I want to do is start looking at individual fights. So I started with these 3 fights that there's footage of available. But I'm also going to do other fights, mostly from the written word, newspaper articles, things like that. Read the reports of the fight, read the lead up, and talk about maybe. And the reason I'm going just one fight at a time, I'm not trying to even talk about the series in fights. Like we'll touch on the series, but in the Jeanette piece, I'm going to mostly focus on the fight in question so that we can get really in there with the details. Let me see. I'm going to run this one more time before I get off. I'm going to run the footage of full speed footage. This should be. Antonio Mosley, Ray Robinson, Kid Gallivan, Ezra Charles, Charlie Burley, and Sam McVeigh, Joe Jeanette. Oh yeah, the 49 rounds in Paris. Okay, I take it back. Actually, it would be tempting to get all three fight. You know, three is not enough, is it? 30 isn't enough. Conchon. Okay, I'm gonna put these up on the screen. So Antonio's dream fights: Robinson, Gavilan, Charles Burley, McVeigh, Jeanette. I assume you mean their second fight in 1909, the fight they had, the 49 rounder. Yeah, what a fight that would be. That's a quality list. I feel like I would want to see Langford Walcott, like even if I only had three. Just be curious because you could see Walcott when he was still world class. And then you can see a young Langford dealing with this legend, this pound for pound legend. All right, let's see. Conchonnery, Gene Tunney, Harry Greb. The first fight between them, right? Wasn't that the first time they fought? Someone in the chat can confirm that. Yeah, I think it was the first time they met. Greb beat the crap out of him. Yeah, that would be really interesting. That'd be fantastic to see. Tony says, yeah, the 49 round bout. Yeah, because, my goodness, what these guys go through. Uh-oh, 86 weighed in. Hardline, I don't know if you're still in the chat, but I would love to know. That would be hard for a brain like yours to narrow it down to three fights footage. It's torture. 86, I would like to see Sullivan versus Kilrain since we have the picks. The video would be good. Yeah. That was an inordinately long fight, right? Is that the one I'm thinking of? You know, some part of me would want to see one of Langford's. Hey, how about the fight where Langford, I can't remember what year that happened, where Langford took out Harry Wills in the 19th round. That would be a great fight to have, right? Because you get almost 19 rounds of them fighting each other. The back and forth, and then the 19th round knockout. That would be interesting. But yeah, Jeanette and McVeigh and all the times they were reportedly each of them, you know, and the arc of that fight where Jeanette's getting punished over the first, was it 14 rounds? I can't remember, but the swings back and forth in a fight that long, just incredible. Like a military campaign rather than a battle. They had so many rounds, different battles along the way. What an epic fight. Let's see, what else we got in the chat here? 86. Oh, the Sullivan Kilrain was 2 hours and change. My goodness. That's another thing too, the Jeanette McVeigh, you know, if you had that whole fight, it's almost cheating, you know, because you get so much bang for the buck. The Gans Nelson bout, didn't they have an inordinately long fight? That would be another good one. Tony Mosley. Okay, now I see Langford's defense when coming forward. Keep left hand extended, keep Lang at bay by feigning and right hand high to parry while leaning to his left, so head be off the center line. Exactly. Exactly, Antonio. And what I love to do, and what I'm going to have to do maybe for the part 4 finale, is splice in some Joe Louis footage where you see a taller guy try to emulate the mechanics of that, translated to it being a larger guy. But you see Joe Louis he's not stepping square. He's in the side stance so he can keep his head off the center line, but he's looking to catch with the rear hand and throw the left. And you know, he can throw with the left, but he's got that rear hand ready to bat it away. So whereas today, a lot of times, I don't know if it's because of timing or just training methodology, but you see fighters, they punch and they put their gloves up, like punch them. Maybe it's because of the larger gloves, but hit and not be hit, even through the gloves, you know. Langford's not trying to get hit at all. Even when they bang, he just knows that he can dish out more, so it'll be the end of the fight if he keeps, like here. Langford's still not trying to get hit. See there, he slipped a punch. We're gonna have to slow motion that. That's beautiful. That was a lovely slip. It all happened so fast, and you see it on YouTube with the old timey speed, and it's just like, whatever. We're gonna go the other route. We're gonna slow it down, zoom in, really pick apart. Part 4 is gonna be the epic technique analysis. This has mostly just been ranting, which is a lot of fun. That's very well. I'm going to put it back up. That's very well observed, Antonio. So he's crowding him, but he's not just crowding him. He like there he eats a little jab, but it doesn't do anything. You know, he just leans to the side, takes some of the sting off it, and just keeps going. Still playing with his head, showing him no respect. But he is respecting the rules. He's fighting the clean fight that the rules require. Lang was the one with the discipline problem. Because in the fight before this, that same year in London or in Kensington, I think it's in Kensington, in the same arena, he got DQ'd in the first round in his previous fight. He gets DQ'd in this one, hit Langford after he'd slipped, hit him on the head, top of the head when he was down. But Langford has supreme discipline. He's had to, he's carried people for promoters, like he's like for the fans, put the show on for the fans. Because in the time that Langford was coming up, exhibitions are very popular. So there were times when fighters seem to have had an agreement to do an exhibition. The ref calls a no contest and leaves the ring. But so Langford is used to boxers at this time. Some of them are used to situations where you're different degrees of pressure, just like we do in sparring and training. It's like when we used to spar, you go, okay, we go 70% speed, 70% power, which is pretty stiff test, but you're not banging it out. You're not trying to put someone down at that level of power. So Langford was able to carry people. He was able to. He's very clever. And it's interesting. I'm gonna zoom all the way, and I'm gonna find the actual pixel, like the proper ratio for the video, so we can see it full size. Adolfo says the old recorded video footage is 1888. Yeah, I'm not sure, Adolfo. I wouldn't mind seeing Greb versus Walker. Yeah, that's worth putting on the screen. I wouldn't mind seeing that either. Although that, as far as films that we know existed, that 20 rounds of Langford and McVeigh, which was being shown in Australia, but it might actually have been fight in Paris. I'm not actually sure which fight it is. I'll have to figure that out. Tonio, leaning to his right, whoops my hands. I didn't even notice. I know what you meant. Rodolfo says it was like 2 seconds long, just a short clip of a family house. Oh, the oldest video? Oh, interesting. 86 boxing, maybe Rodolfo. I know that Leonard Cushing was old, but it might be after that. I think it was 1894. Con Connery, John L. Sullivan is an interesting animal since his career spanned the early regulations in boxing, starting at bare knuckle, from London prize ring rules to Marquis of Queensberry. Yeah. Yeah, talk about bridging gaps. And Langford, I was saying in part 2, I was saying that he fought 3 generations of powerful fighters. Although some of the greats of the previous generation were still great when he fought them, like Joe Gans and Barbados Walcott, but they were elite before he was even fighting. When he was a young teenager, they were elite. He fought them, and then he fought greats of his own day, then he fought greats of the next generation. He was fearless. He definitely got his fights in. Tonio says modern fighters' hand and feet positioning, in my opinion, isn't safe since they rely on the gloves for majority of defense and they're standing straight up on the center line. Yeah, the defense by just putting your gloves up and letting someone hit the gloves, it's not good to get. It still hurts to get hit through the gloves. It's not going to necessarily knock you out, but you're still getting your brain rattled. And the bigger gloves protect the hands, so you can throw harder with big gloves without breaking your hands. So yeah, it's different today. It's changed a little bit for a variety of reasons. But I like this early era where some fights were short fights, 6-rounders. Some fights were really long fights, or scheduled to a finish, like that second 1909 contest between Jeanette and McVeigh. Let's see, Rodolfo says, I was talking about in general, but that's a good question. What was the first video recorded boxing fight? I think I've seen a documentary. It was Corbett versus the New Jersey champ. Rodolfo said, yeah, I just Googled it, brother. Edson was behind it. 86 boxing. I would definitely just like to see Barbados Joe taking on bigger guys to see how he broke them down. Absolutely. Like fighting Fighting Big Sandy or something. Interesting. Hold on one sec, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna put on the one of the videos. Let's do a little slow motion here. I like the slow mo. Hold on then. Okay, y'all. Sorry, I'm back. Hopefully, it's even gratifying just seeing the empty footage. So let's see, Conchonry, absolutely. I love to see Barbados Joe put down heavyweights. Yeah, or even some of the training. I mean, it's just different. I think that's partly also why some of the casual fans may struggle to fully appreciate how epic some of the earlier eras were because there's just so little. So it all just seems like a bunch of numbers. Like the idea of Langford having over 300 fights that are known fights, plus however many others. You know, it's hard to comprehend how much he fought. And when you look at his career, his whole career from when he was a teenager all the way through his retirement, it wasn't until like, you know, from '03 to 24, those were all busy years. His slow year was, I think, 1912 in Australia, but he still had a bunch of fights. But some of these guys, he wasn't the only one doing that. He just did, it was just a little more amplified the way he did it. But lots of guys have had these multiple epic years. Barbados Walcott, he fought stiff competition many years. Same with Joe Gans. Lots of other guys. But Langford doing it with a size disadvantage, I think, adds to how epic it is. And the fact that he was doing it with a size advantage at heavyweight, where his opponents, generally guys that size or that much bigger, that the likelihood of getting stopped, getting knocked out at the heavier weights, and him being small for a large weight class, brain rattling heavyweights. And even if in general heavyweights were a little smaller, then they're still much bigger than him. So it'd be like today, Canelo. I heard that something about he was negotiating to fight either fight at cruiserweight or fight a cruiserweight at a catchweight. He'd be giving up some weight. I'm not sure how much he cuts to make super middle or light heavy, but if he's giving up weight, but that's been done a bunch. And some of these guys fought like Langford. He was doing it lots of times every year. So his career would be like, say Canelo several years ago had just started fighting across multiple weights, including up at cruiser and actual legit heavyweights, as well as doing all the other stuff he did down at the lower weights. It's not an exact parallel, but there's certainly a lot to admire about anyone who can handle the schedule. Because if you just look at Langford's, his career, he's not taking much time off, a few months here and there, sometimes when he go to another country. But generally, he's just fighting and fighting and fighting for his whole career, his long ass career. And that's different to today where they fight. They're like, I'm going to go chill for some weeks and I'm going to take a few months, do this. Then we're going to negotiate and I'll see you guys in 5 to 6 months. 5, 6 months, he'd probably have 4 or 5 more fights at least. On a slow year, he would have another 2 or 3 fights in that time. In 5 or 6 months, in half a year. Pretty wild stuff. Let's see. 86 Boxing says, yeah, pretty insane amount of fights, many in short spans. These guys are built different. Yeah, and it's drive and the alternative for them, you know, and also how with so few champions, how good you had to be to get that opportunity, unless you were very carefully groomed to come up. Like so for Bill Lang, knocking out Fitzsimmons, even though it doesn't mean what it would mean when Ruby Rob was in his career, but that must have been great advertising for him. Finish a legend, even if he's past his prime, you know, just as far as becoming a notable person. So people would do various things to bring themselves up, and that's partly why Langford was avoided. Because if you're bringing someone up that you run into him, you can catch a bunch. You can keep fighting him and catch a bunch of losses. It happened to Al Kubiak and Jim Barry. He gave them each tons of losses. So other people like Al Kaufman didn't want to fight him. Although I think I saw an article where they were scheduled to fight, but Langford pulled out, and that there was the next year, Kaufman, if I'm remembering, Kaufman's manager the year later said that Kaufman had offered to pay Langford $5,000 to just have a friendly go instead of a vicious fight, and then planned to double cross him. Came in fighting shape, and came in, and Langford wasn't in shape for a fight because they thought they were having a little like sort of a gentleman's agreement to not bang it out, and Langford left. That's according to, I mean, it's accurate that Langford left, but like that, the reason for it, that was according to Al Kaufman's. At that point, he was his ex-manager. So I don't know if it, again, you know, a little bit of a grain of salt, because if they'd had an uh, unfriendly departure and he was only his ex-manager, who knows? But I thought it was interesting when I heard that. Let's see, Antonio Mosley. Another thing I've noticed. Look at how Langford. Oh, hold on. Let me pull up the video. You're commenting on the video. Let me run this thing. Okay, this is now the second half of the footage in slow motion. All right, let's go back. What did you notice, my friend? Antonio noticed. Another thing I noticed, look at how both Langford and Lang would grab and hold the forearms of each other, stopping the punches before they were even thrown. Foreman and Sadler did it way after. Very well observed. Antonio, you are a gold mine of quality observations. Oh, thanks, Hyphy. Yeah, we just it's become one of my favorite subjects, because my favorite channel, Hardline Boxing, it's his favorite subject. So I was exposed to a lot of it, which I'm grateful for. And then Scrapbook Boxing, it's one of his favorite subjects. So there's other good stuff on YouTube. Just it's not a lot, but there is other good stuff on YouTube about Langford. So I'm just trying to add to it. So if people want to know, like, I'm sharing what I'm learning. I'm learning all the time in the chat as well, which is why I'm doing these interactively. This is for my growth, as well as hopefully to share something maybe that people, it had escaped someone that they hadn't noticed. Yeah, but that's a great point, Antonio. Does it block it? If okay, I'll put it up a bit, as long as it doesn't block the footage. Because yeah, some of that might be because of the rules, but you can see Langford's shutting him down on purpose that way. He's intercepting it. Yeah, he's intercepting an angle and sort of parries off, ricochets off the forearms. I love that there. That straight to the body when he's circling out. You know, he can punish him whatever he does. He's so experienced and so talented and tough. So sometimes like there, he just threw the lead right. But when you watch on zoomed in, which we will on extreme slow motion, you can see he's all the time, he's pulsing his lead hand. He's pulsing his rear hand as well. He's messing with him in these little micro feints. I don't know what you would call it, but he's pulsing in like a broken rhythm with both fists, kind of playing with Lang's head. And this is, you know, he's massively experienced now, but this is only 1911. I mean, Hardline and Scrapbook will tell you, like, just from after this fight to the end of his career, he has a ridiculous Hall of Fame body of work. So partly why he was able to be competitive a lot of the time, way past his prime, and with the sight in only one eye, was experienced like no one has, or at least no one who kept a, his combination of success and being at the highest levels. Because there's guys like Joe Grimm who fought lots of great fighters and powerful fighters and contenders, but pretty much lost enough that the newspapers joked about him being a punching bag, slab of meat, or whatever they would be saying. Basically he was there to lose. There was a time he almost got a fight with Langford, but he had to win a fight that he had coming up to do it, and he probably didn't. Langford fought someone else. That right there. See, he shows him the right and then hits him the left. That's not the only time he does it, but he's doing this wonderful dance of deception in there to mess with Bill Lang. Sam Langford, as it appears in this fight, there's a lot of psychology right there. See, he bats the punch away. He's standing almost square to him, and he just bats the punch away, moves his head back a little bit. Pull parry, I don't know what we would call it. We need some terminology here, folks. But I'm going to isolate these exchanges so we can really see there again. See, he parries with catches with the right and then throws the left hook. He's holding the right, and then he throws the left hook. Then he throws the right straight and the left hook. Then another right straight. Lang, to his credit, pulls him off balance, throws an uppercut, digs to the body twice, the round's over. Really well done. Lang showed some class there. He's getting smashed, and then he's still coherent. He's still trying to win. He must have been scared. He came in great shape. 86 boxing, and then they had same-day weigh-ins back then, tougher. Yeah, absolutely. Langford needed to fight Joe Gans 138 ringside, I'm pretty sure. That was done to Gans. Gans did that to other boxers when he became the A-side. Langford was of a different disposition. He didn't like cutting weight. And it might have even been the thing with the Joe Gans fight where he was like, that's it for cutting weight. Trying to lose weight. He wasn't into it. And as it turned out, he didn't need to be, because he was excellent against larger men than himself. See, Antonio, I wouldn't say it was tougher with same-day weigh-ins. That encouraged fighters to fight in the natural weight divisions. That's a good point, Antonio, although there are examples back where champs in the early 1900s, where champs were fighting title fights above the title fight weight because maybe they were struggling to get down. So it's not the degree that they do it today, where the science of destroying your future with sucking your body completely dry is different. But they did have to train down sometimes, but not Langford. He wasn't about that. He didn't enjoy his experiences trying to lose the weight. So, but I have heard that argument with the same-day weigh-ins. I'm kind of undecided. I try to notice, because they've played around with different distances in mixed martial arts between the weigh-in and the fight. And it is because people will cut the max and then rehydrate. And then now they're not even really the size that the weight class would indicate. So it makes it a young man's game, someone who can lose all that water weight and then recover overnight, or even fight better that same day. 86 boxing, Antonio, fair point. The amateur boxers weigh in same day. Oh, I didn't know that. So 86 boxing, so do some amateurs fight above their professional weight when they're amateurs because they have to weigh in the same day? Antonio says we need it back for professional fighters to 86, yeah. Antonio Mosley, right hand across the chest to parry the jab. Hold on. I already like that comment. I'm going to replay the slow motion from the first half. Let's go back to the comments. I said earlier, oh, this one's going to be shorter. Almost 2 hours, 20 minutes. That's so funny. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. I'm enjoying this immensely, and I have to go in on my night off because of the crap storm and what it did to the supply system. So this is a wonderful release. I'm going to be smiling at least until I get there. So Antonio Mosley, right hand across his chest to parry the jab, stepping and feigning to keep his opponent at bay while setting up his punches. Yeah, and sometimes you can see, sometimes he's stepping. He takes a little bit extra step. When he's stepping almost square, but he's taking a little bit larger than a shuffling step to reposition himself a few inches one direction or the other relative to where Lang is. Lang's doing his best. He's changing direction as best he can. See, he's like, I go one way, I go the other way. And that one, he got away. See, he stuffed him and got away. Langford just keeps cutting the ring. Pulsing with the left hand 3 times, hits him with the right. Lang, see, is trying to use his size, leads him into a left, but then Langford retorts, showing him the right. So Lang's playing a game. He's circling to he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. He's playing chess. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do and get away. Left and a right, get in there. But he's just not able to figure out the full puzzle. Langford has too much variation. And you see there where Langford employs some of his strength and smacks him back with the right hand instead of pushing him. Let's see, Antonio Mosley. Langford just stepped feint with his left foot to mimic a power jab, but come with the right instead. Yes, full body psychological warfare. Antonio Mosley, agree. 86 Boxing says, what some of these guys and gals are doing to get down is insane. Yeah, it's a shame. 86, yeah, stuff they do now could get them hurt big time. They definitely pay for it. Kidney stones, intestinal issues and things like it. It's just not healthy to drastically dehydrate your body. I cut weight once. I said on part 2, I took a kickboxing match. I was actually drunk. I didn't prepare for it properly. I wasn't in training at the time, but I did cut weight. It was the only thing I did to prepare was try to make the weight because it got adjusted a few days before the fight to an even lower weight. So and I'll never cut weight again. One and done. That's the 86 Boxing. That's generally the case. Many do end up going down after they leave the amateurs because the weight classes are slightly different than the pro weights. I see. Yeah, it's interesting. Same day weigh-in. I wonder how that would. I suppose there would be an incentive to just fight at your weight. I would be fine if people just fought at their weight. Like just weigh in and fight. But because some people would try to fight dehydrated and get a lot more often than not get destroyed and look horrible and have to just go. But if they were able to enforce it, the fact that they are fighting at the actual weight, that's they do. I guess they do rehydration clauses, right, where that you can only put on so many pounds after. It's interesting. I appreciate the information and the analysis, Antonio, and the information. 86. Just glad to have you guys here. Thanks to the other people in the chat who may not be commenting, but are maybe listening along, and the people that listen later. Thank you so much. Just talking to Sam Langford. We're going to be doing a lot of this because I've spent more time in the last several years studying Sam Langford than everything else in boxing combined. Probably. Especially because I rewatch and re-listen to material, and so that's why I'm mostly talking about him. It's not that I don't appreciate all the different eras. I'm just kind of fascinated by this, and living in Boston, I'm hoping that maybe I can take an in-person trip to the Boston Library and some of these museums, and maybe dig up something that the internet boxing community hasn't seen. You just never know. Never know what could happen, but for right now, I'm still in the early stages of my research, and these talks help me just straighten it all in my head. And I also obviously learn from the chat. Antonio Mosley says, here's a little story. When I first started working out, I was able to drop around 10 pounds of water weight very fast. I was gassed and drained. After that, I take my time cutting weight. Yeah, I weighed myself when I used to go hit the bag and do a marathon session. It's like 2 or more hours hitting the heavy bag. I would sweat sometimes 3 or 4 pounds of water out. I'd be sipping water during the workout, but I would have a net loss of like 3 or 4 pounds in my most grueling workout. So there are probably guys who do way more than that. But for me, that felt like a lot. I definitely felt different at the end of it, even if I wasn't sore. If I did it right, warmed up, warmed down, still feel the effect of just having all that liquid out of the body. So I think a gallon is 8.3, roughly 8.3 pounds. So, if I'm sweating out 4 pounds, that's like almost half a gallon of water of moisture out of my body. Crazy stuff. So you think these guys are you know, every 8.3 pounds someone's cutting, unless they're doing it also with their diet. But if they're just doing straight sweat, it's a gallon for every 8, you know, a little bit less than 8.5 pounds. That's crazy. Con Connery says James Toney used to basically eat sawdust when he had to make 160, which often resulted in fighting like fire-breathing dragon because he went in hungry. Hangry. I love that term, hangry. Yeah, some guys it probably helps wind them up and make them more fight ready. Others, maybe the drain outweighs the mindset. Because like Langford was not unique, but like he was a very good example of someone who's very easygoing, but he could fight his ass off. I remember in a documentary, someone was saying that Rocky Marciano had the ability to take a nap right before a fight. He wasn't concerned. He could just sleep on cue. He was always tired, I'm assuming from working out or whatever, but I thought that was very interesting, you know. Just take a little nap. But not everyone has that. Some people need something to wind them up. Hold on 1 second, guys. Yes, anyway, guys, I actually have to go to work. I've actually run out of time. Talked up the whole thing. I'm going to play this one more time before I go. Appreciate you guys a lot. Part 4 will be coming in a few days. It's going to take me a little while to format and chop and edit and render all, and then label and upload all the video clips. I'm not sure how many dozens of exchanges there are in the several minutes that we have of this fight, but I am going to isolate them all and make sure we have them zoomed in slow motion. Because some of those exchanges, they just, you know, it's easier to see it as wild swinging when it's a little bit too fast to catch like the subtlety of things. So look at some of his positioning relative to Lang and some of the things Lang was doing to get out of the way, decisions they were mostly making. Conshiner said Rocky needed his recovery time because he apparently trained like a raging beast. Yeah, he did. Thanks, Rodolfo. He says, hey, brother, get your work in. Stay well, random. Yes, well, thank you guys for being in the chat. Tony Mosley had a great time, random. Hope you don't get snowed in tonight. No, the storm has already happened, but it affected the trucking routes. So in the warehouse, we didn't get everything. And that's why I'm coming in tonight to help them overcome the adversity. But I don't mind because tomorrow I work a half night instead of a full night. I'm a happy guy. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you guys, especially. Shout out, big shout out again to Hardline Boxing Talk and Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs. Two great places to learn about the texture of boxing history. Thank you for showing up, everybody. Really appreciate it. The analysis, Antonio, and 86, the information, Con, stories, information, everybody. Let me read. Hyphy says, this is a good stream. I didn't get a chance to look at the footage you showed as I'm occupied. Still have enjoyed hearing about Sam and his counterparts. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure doing it. It really is. And I'll do more. I'm trying to get more comfortable talking. I mean, I'm saying that I've done almost 2.5 hours, but I'm still trying to find if it makes any sense. I talk a lot for my whole life, but I'm trying to find my voice as far as the most comfortable zone to be in when I'm presenting this kind of material. Because it's different. When I talk about mixed martial arts, I'm much more of a rabid fan, so I kind of rant a lot harder. So I'm trying to be a little more cerebral. We'll get there in the end. Thank you for coming by, everyone. Have a fantastic night. I'll be wishing you all the best all night long while I work. All right, now, take care.